Good gracious, everybody, if it isn't episode 103 of the Warhammer 40,000 podcast that is known by the identity of Look Out, Sir. My name is Dan, and it's that bit at the beginning of the show where I introduce my good buddy Philip. How's it going, Phil?
It's pretty exciting. We've got lots of 40k coming up now for both of us.
That's true. The 40k drought of 2020 and or the majority of 2021 is now a distant memory as we partake in all manner of Warhammer 40,000 related fun, right, Phil?
All the goodies that there can be.
Exactly. We ain't scared of no... Wow. I mean, to be fair, I probably am, to be honest with you, but just gotten to that point now where I'm just like, whatever. Out I go into the world.
Exactly. It's worth it for 40k.
And there's a statement. See, I often feel like, though, as well, like, you know, in a way, though, if you're going to do anything, 40k events are probably some of the, you know, potentially safest options, right? Because, I mean, all the sorts of people that indulge in the hobby, it's highly unlikely that they go out and do anything other than, you know, sit around and indulge in small toy soldiers related fun. So, you know, safe as houses, these people, right?
Well, exactly. They're all isolating at home, painting their models up rather than going out socializing. I mean, there will be some cool kids out there that, you know, party and do 40k, but they're a rare exception. We don't.
I've never heard of this, Phil. Never heard of this at all. You know, never in my life have I indulged in any parties.
Well, that's good. Be safe.
Thank you.
But also the actual, you know, process of an event. Obviously, to an extent, in the past, you were crammed into gaming halls like Warhammer World. But in theory, the concept of a game of 40k where you're playing against one other person, and you're doing that normally socially distanced from across a table.
That is true.
Is a relatively, you know, safe matter. Obviously, you're mucking around, touching people's dices and models and stuff like that. But
that's true. Kissing each other.
Well, exactly. That's the celebration you do at the end.
Exactly. That's what I do in place of a handshake, basically.
That's why I haven't played 40k with you for a while.
Well, exactly. It's why I always win. It's like I get you at the start.
No,
it's like exactly. It's like I don't want to play this game anymore. Away with you. Anyway, there you go. Glorious times. What are we going to talk about today, though, Phil?
Today it's a double bill. We're going to be talking about Forge World and all sorts of things about Forge World. We're going to have a little history down memory lane, talking about what Forge World was, what it's become. Is it fit for purpose? Is it providing us with nice niche 40k minis anymore, or has it gone down the rabbit hole of the specialist games? Yes, is the answer. But we'll be talking about that in more detail. Then the second header that we have is Kill Team. We're going to be talking about the latest previews that came out of Gen Con, the Tau and the Sisters and the new starter sets, and what are our thoughts on that.
There you go. I like the fact that you led with Forge World. I felt like that was the weaker of the two. I would have assumed we'd lead with Gen Con, follow with Forge World. But it's up to you. You know, you're the guy who does the graphics. You tell me which one you think is best.
Well, I might try and squeeze them both in. Personally, I was going to lead with Forge World, but now
there you go. No, look, you've decided, man. That's fine. Don't you worry about it. You know, you have that degree of autonomy.
The power that I have.
Exactly. This is the power that you wield. Much like those who leave 5-star reviews.
Peter.
Oh, hello, Dad.
What are you doing in here, son?
Oh, I'm
what
just...
have I told you about wasting your time with these little plastic figurines?
It's not a waste of time. I like it.
How dare you talk back to me, Peter? It's about time you grew up.
I don't want to grow up. Oh, man, maybe there's something on the radio. Yeah, this is nicer.
Peter!
What's that?
That's right, it's me, the ghost of award-winning TV and radio presenter, Jeremy Beadle.
Jeremy Beadle?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Now, let me tell you here, Sonny, my dad was always telling me to grow up, and I never did. And look how successful I was. So ignore him, Peter, and keep playing with that little plastic crack. And while you're at it, listen to the Look Out Sir podcast, which right now, it's time for the 5-star review.
Wow, thanks, Jeremy.
Who are you talking to with there, son?
Jeremy Beadle.
What? No! Be blood, Beadle.
This week's 5-star review comes from where, Phil?
Apple Podcasts of Great Britain.
You are quite wrong, Phil, for on this occasion. And although obviously I acknowledge as well, and I have to kind of call this out, that obviously I was wrong last week to have doubted you. So I paid extra attention to what you said there to ensure that I am indeed correct in my damnation of your inability to guess what I've randomly decided to call out.
I mean, I'm not surprised if you just say whatever isn't what I've said. You've got a couple lined up from every single platform. And so if I say it's Great Britain, you'll say it's America. If I say it's Facebook, you'll go, it's the UK.
Well, it was interesting because I was looking at Apple Podcasts of the Americas, but the next one on the Apple Podcasts of Americas list is the guy who gave us a 5-star review that actually gave us a 3-star review, even though his 5-star review says, or rather his 3-star review says 5 stars, but he only gave us 3. So we're electing to ignore that individual.
Is that he's null and void because he hasn't followed the rules of the game?
I sort of wanted to call it out, if not only for the fact that I thought it was, a bit of a funny one to kind of draw attention to. But then I thought, no, we are breaking the rules, and I won't, as Warhammer 40,000 players, we never break the rules, right, Phil?
No, of course we don't. Why would we? But we did. I'm sure we did a shout out ages ago talking about this discrepancy. We gave him the opportunity to not redact, but change and upgrade it to a 5-star because it felt like the 3-star was in error.
It does read that way, yes.
Because he actually says it's a 5-star review, but has he scored us 3 or is it the other way around?
Yeah, he says it's a 5-star review, has 5 stars on the description of the review, but it has 3 stars against it as an actual score. Very weird. Although, to be fair, we have had and continue to get 5-star reviews where they just tell us off, which I think is the best. I enjoy those the most, where it's like, this podcast is awful, 5 stars. I'm like, brilliant. More of those.
You've been a very naughty boy, Dan.
No, I like those ones. I think they're great. Yeah, exactly. That's the stuff I enjoy. But this one comes from the Lookout Sir Facebook group because we've been getting some nice momentum on that side of things. So I figured I needed to sort of chop some of that Facebook wood. Now, full disclosure, this week's 5-star review comes from an individual called Loz, and Loz is actually someone that I know in real life. So it was very nice of Loz to actually enjoy the show. It's a strange one because me and Loz know each other through, past instances. But it's strange in a way because I have so little to do with him on a day-to-day basis. But it's quite lovely in a way that he is still, enjoying my contributions to his day-to-day life by listening to the Warhammer 40,000 podcast known as Lookout Sir. So thank you, Loz, for that. But yeah, so there you go. Full disclosure. This is someone I know in reality. He's one of those people that, I had as a friend on Facebook that I told about my podcast existing in the initial instance and was actually kind enough to listen and seemingly continued listening, Phil. So it wasn't all just beyond the tabletop Krieg fans from the outset.
He's hooked. He's gotten a sniff of that drug that we are providing, and after that free one, he's come back for more ever since.
That's it. We're releasing pheromones through people's headphones.
I mean, if the dulcet sound of our voices is not a serotonin hit to the brain, I don't know what else would be.
Well, exactly. It's certainly something hitting your brain, but
yes.
Maybe not serotonin. Anyway, here we go. Loz with the 5-star review. 5 stars, top marks, chaps. There we go. Lovely stuff. Been following since episode 1 and can't even talk now. And have enjoyed every minute. Quality content, if not for my eyeballs, definitely for my ear balls. God, I'm not talking today. There you go. You have you got ear balls, Phil? I suppose those would be the lobes, wouldn't it? Those are sort of like ear balls.
Maybe over your drum. That could be an ear ball because when they get damaged, they hurt a lot.
There you go. They do. You don't want to go damaging the old drum. Perfect bants that makes any motorway commute fly by. Would love it if you took listeners' entries for the Q&A transitional noise. Oh yeah, entries to the Q&A. Okay, there you go. If not, just so that Dan has the pleasure of deciphering the ombre of God knows what. And there we are. I'm not entirely sure what ombre means in that context. You got any, context as towards the meaning of that phrase?
I'm not smart enough to know.
According to this, ombre is a hair color technique.
Yeah, I'm sure there's another. There must be another meaning, or he's. I mean, because he's either saying one of two things. One, he wants people to submit noises that we can play on the show,
Yes.
which we did do for our 100th, and I'm not sure what we did with the, I think, 2 people that gave us those transitional noises. If you ever used them at the end.
It was weird because we got we had 2 fantastic listeners that contributed some, recordings to us, which was obviously massively appreciated. And I'm sure because I think, Phil, you dealt with them because they emailed them to you on Beyond the Tabletop. But so I'm sure you showered them in praise and thanks. But I chose not to use them in the end because it was one of those elements of our ideas around episode 100 that I didn't have a chance to kind of fully flesh out and push people to do extensively. You want more than 2 is basically where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think a few other people wanted to do it, but it's the concept of recording to a decent quality. Because I know Toke tried it and he was like, it just sounds awful on his whatever recording device that he had. And so I think some people got scuppered by that element. So the other option that Loz might be saying is that he wants to be able to submit a stream of text that you have to interpret and voice on their behalf. So it could be a bunch of Z's and E's and I's and, Z, something. Maybe that's what he means by the weird ombre interpretation.
Well, there you go. Not a blending of one color hue to another, usually moving tints and shades from light to dark.
Well, that works on an audio level. Like you do blend the tones up and down. So maybe
that is true. That is true. Anyway, there we go. Maybe I should just give Loz a call and try and understand what the heck he's talking about. I mean, clearly this is a reason why me and him hardly talk to each other these days. He is an idiot.
I'm sure he'll appreciate that after this 5-star review.
Exactly. Thanks, Loz. Now go away, you silly boy. No, genuinely, mate. Thank you very much for that. And I did respond to him when he actually left that review because I forgot that he listened to the show. And he obviously enjoys it, which is fantastic. So there you go. It's a wonderful thing when you have the support of your friends like you, Phil, who will elaborate, I'm sure, on Loz's 5-star review.
Thank you, Loz, for your perfect 5-star review with some excellent suggestions on how to improve the show with some interesting audio transitions, whether recorded by yourself or Dan interpreting a stream of unconscious random keyboard bashes that your cat has done. But we're glad listening from episode 1 requires, I think, a round of applause. Well done.
Well done.
I don't think many people have done it, but those that have, we admire you because that is commitment.
I did work out how many hours of content that was at one point, but I didn't write it down and I can't remember. But I know it was a lot.
Do you know what? If we ever do a competition, guessing the hours would be a good. It's like, how many peanuts in the jar kind of competition. That'd be a good.
Well, I think it was something close to 400 hours or something by episode 100. It was a lot.
Is that all?
It was a lot.
I would have thought it'd be in the thousands, but maybe that's just me being.
No, because each episode has about an average length of about 3 hours to 4 hours, I guess. So
yeah, actually, no, that's true. That would.
So it's relatively easy
reasonable.
to decide.
Yeah.
I mean, 400 hours is still a heck of a lot, Phil.
How many days is that, do you think?
Well, it'll be 400 divided by 24, which I'm sure you can do with relatively easy mental arithmetic, right?
Yes, via this, hold on, calculator that I'm using. Hold on, tap.
Oh, there you go. The mental arithmetic of a calculator.
16 days, 0.6.
There you go. That sounds about right, actually. I think it was something like 16 days worth of content.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah. There you go. So that's what Loz has done. He's listened to us for 16 days.
at least, because I could say think about what else you could have been doing during that time, but he was commuting, so he was forced not to listen to us, but he was already doing something else and got to listen to us to while away that time. But you've been commuting for 16 days is what that's saying, if not longer.
Potentially. Well, there you go. We're always in motion, us. That's how it goes. But on the topic of motion, it's time for the transitional noise to get on with this there thing. Thanks, Loz. Appreciate it. Moving on. Transitional noise. Woo! Right there, Phil. In this part of the podcast, we're going to be talking about Gen Con, or more specifically, the various Kill Team themed announces that have taken place within the confines of Gen Con. Are they still doing a tournament, do we know, at Gen Con? That was the thing they did, wasn't it, at the Gen Con? I think they had tournaments at Gen Con, didn't they? Or was Gen Con the one without tournaments?
I thought Gen Con's just a gaming sort of marketeering. It's the head honchos of merch selling stuff to suppliers, but also, regular people can come along. You can play games, and I think it's more like intro games, especially if you're doing like indie games and stuff. You'd have your stall out, introduce people. I don't think I've ever been, so this is just my recollection of what I've seen online, but I don't think they really did
I like the fact that you're not sure whether you've been or not. Like the idea that somehow you managed to find yourself in America attending a wargaming or board gaming convention that somehow you weren't aware of.
Oh, no, I'm definitely sure I haven't been. I'm just saying I'm not entirely sure if they did do tournaments, but I got the impression they didn't.
Oh, fair enough. Whatever the case, they're showing off some stuff at Gen Con, most notably for us in the 40k flavor Kill Team, which we do need to get around to talking about at some point in the future. We just haven't had the chance to play it, have we?
Exactly. We need some time where I'm currently sitting down reading the rules as we speak. Not literally right now, but in my off time when I'm not slaving away to this podcast for my life. I'm reading rules. Once we've done that, and once you've done it, and we can meet up on a weekend, we can get some games in, and then we will sit down and slave away on this podcast talking about said Kill Team.
Exactly. We will do precisely that. Maybe we should make an impromptu Kill Team bat rep, Phil, that we do as part of our podcast pattern.
Do you know what? Maybe we should do. Yeah.
Maybe you and me as part of the podcast should just do a really weird video Kill Team bat rep that is then, appears as a video on YouTube, but is just going to be delivered audibly on the podcast. It'd be very strange. Experimenting with brave new territory.
Yeah, let's give it some thought before we commit to anything. Yeah.
No, of course, as is so often the way. But anyway, let's talk about the new Kill Team stuff. So the first thing worth talking about is that, and to be fair, it's not really that remarkable. They have essentially revealed the Kill Team starter set, which is essentially a dumbed down or slightly reduced version of the Kill Team game that has been available for purchase up to this point. The thingy-mabib, what's it called? The one they put out already.
The Kill Team Octarius.
That's right. So this is not the Kill Team Octarius. It is most of the Kill Team Octarius without all of the fabulous orc terrain, which in some respects, depending on the cost, of course, because the cost is going to be critical to this. But, depending on the cost, it might have done you better to have waited, because clearly this could be a superior, cost-efficient addition, depending on your needs.
Well, yeah, because, I've talked about it many times on podcasts. I wanted to get Kill Team, but at the same time I didn't. And one of the reasons was the teams, but the main reason was the terrain. And it's like, it's cool. Doesn't fit in with any of my existing stuff. And it's also, I don't really have a space for like more terrain, especially stuff I know I'm not going to use all that much. And the main price of Kill Team is just too much for getting into it. So I ended up just buying some off of eBay because somebody clearly bought the Octarius Kill Team box, was splitting it down dirt cheap. Just so I picked up the rule book, the Octarius book, the little sprue that contains the ruler, or the
yes.
combat gauge, as it's officially called, with the barricades and the token sheet. And I think that's all I needed to play, like the basic stuff. Obviously, I need either models to represent my Krieg kill team, which I can, as a Krieg player, can relatively easily do, I think.
Relatively
Well,
easily.
I don't have a Krieg medic, for example.
That's true. That's true.
But I did via a shout out to bitsandkits.com. We're doing a sale on the individual bits of kill team, so I managed to buy all the extras that come on that kill team sprue. So like the medic
Nice.
pack, the flare gun, the map, basically all of that cost me like a tenner to buy all of those fancy bits of equipment. So to me, that's like, say, because it's probably going to sell for like 25 quid to 30 quid, I would say, for that veteran kill team box on its own. So to get it for a third or at least half price for the bits I actually care about to convert into other stuff, I think is worth it, because I've already got a kill team that I made for the last one that was the Apostles of Thalos, which is a Chaos Renegade warband using the old Forge World Renegade Chaos minis. So they're like traitor guardsmen, basically. So it's like, that was my kill team that I used a lot in the previous edition. I really want to reuse them again, but I don't know how to marry up rules wise. So potentially there's some scope there for making them as a kind of count as veteran guard. But for some stuff, like maybe a medic-esque character, I need to add in some extra stuff. So getting those extra bits will be helpful for them, unless I decide to run them as something else, for example.
No, that's fair enough, mate. That's fair enough. Well, yeah, I mean, again, interesting that they're expanding and giving us more options. I mean, when you look at Kill Team Octarius, I mean, one thing I will anecdotally throw out there is that it feels like there is a lot of stock of Kill Team Octarius in the world. I mean, I was down in Toyment for a tournament on the weekend, and they still had ample supplies of the Octarius box, as has been the case in a lot of the other retail locations I've been able to visit in recent weeks. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one, because obviously they've got a lot of this Kill Team Octarius still out there, and what's going to be extra interesting is trying to work out what the price will be of this smaller starter set, because right now, with very little effort, I could probably pick up a full copy of Octarius for around £100. It seems like you can get them for as little as, well, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, for a third party retailer, you're going to get like 15% off, so it probably would be about 100. This minus for if you save a terrain on its own, if it was sold separately, would probably be worth 60 quid.
Yeah,
I mean, I imagine this box will probably be sold for like 80, 75, 65. I can't see it going much cheaper than that.
60 quid would be a great price point for this, in terms of making it quite a kind of initially appealing,
a cool bundle deal just for those minis.
Yeah. Well, maybe, I mean, God, if they could get it to 50 quid, I mean, that would be, yeah, quite compelling. Because how much is Warhammer 40,000 starter sets at the moment?
There's 3 different types, isn't there? But I think the most expensive is like 80 odd. I think the cheapest is 20 to 25, and then there's a mid one that's around 50, I think, or 45, something like that.
So by the official prices, you've got the Commander Edition at £105, the Elite Edition at £65, and the Recruit Edition at £32.
Yeah, and you normally get a good 5-10 off those if you go third party.
Yeah, so if you actually look at the Elite Edition contains a unit of Outriders, which I think they retail for about 35-40 quid on their own, unit of Assault Primaris Intercessors, and the Primaris Captain. And then on the Necron side of things, you get a bunch of warriors, some scarabs, Necron Lords, and some of those destroyer things. So that's a good count of models, and that will cost you £65, admittedly, with no real terrain, but and not a rule book or anything other than the sort of simplified rules and things that come in the Elite Edition, but they've managed to do that for 65 quid. So, yeah, I mean, if this box set comes in at around that kind of price range, I'd say it's a pretty compelling offer for people looking to get into a Games Workshop system. And
Yeah.
Seemingly off the bat, Kill Team is potentially going to be a lot easier to play than 40k, which definitely comes with its advantages in terms of getting people excited and getting people involved in tabletop wargaming. Because I do really feel like 40k has a problem at the moment with regards to the amount of rules bloat that it has, but we've spoken extensively about that. But I think Kill Team, with its newer rule set and its relative simplification, as far as I'm aware, they've done away with ranges, they've done away with morale, they've obviously taken steps to try and sort of simplify certain systems. So
yeah, I mean there are some ranges just for pistol weapons, but otherwise all guns pretty much, and flamers, sorry, is the other one. But otherwise, yeah, most range weapons have no range at all. It's like infinite because the board's considered so small, which sort of ties into that conversation we had ages ago when we were talking about Rick Priestley's sort of tabletop gaming tips and the scale of the game and how it applies to the tabletop and stuff like that, where, a lasgun should be able to shoot most of the table, but in a 40k game, that's just not practical or realistic. But on a skirmish game, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's cool to see him engaging with that kind of stuff. I understand why some people kind of find the combat gauge aspect of things quite bizarre. But as I understand it, the combat gauge is actually quite interesting as a tool because of the way that you use it to interact in game. And one of the things I like about the look of Kill Team, and again, not having played it yet, but one of the things that looks really promising for Kill Team is it's a much more three-dimensional, tabletop war game, in so much as I've complained about often, Warhammer 40,000 really is a two-dimensional game now. I hardly ever see anyone utilize verticality in the game of Warhammer 40,000 anymore. It just doesn't seem to happen.
Well, there's very little benefits for being up high. Obviously, you get a bonus to line of sight that you can see, but there's no actual tangible rules giving you any bonus for it, especially since they changed the rules for like knights. So you can't hide up top from a knight now, which also makes sense because that wasn't a very good game mechanic when you couldn't interact with it in these big stomping things where their chainswords are literally at the eye level of these guardsmen hiding up on the first floor of a ruin. So for them to not be able to attack is a bit silly. But then there's just less incentive for putting things up there, especially when objectives can't go up on, into buildings or up on levels and stuff like that. So,
yeah, it just feels like a shame. It feels like a shame that we're in an edition that doesn't really encourage that kind of gameplay or that kind of that kind of rules opportunities, as it were. But regardless, I think, I'm excited to try Kill Team. I'm not sure what Kill Team I'm going to dabble with, but they have obviously seen fit to gift us with imagery of yet more Kill Teams. And I think a lot of people, myself included, are surprised that we're getting yet more Sisters of Battle, which is quite an exciting situation, I suppose. So they're exploring the ideas of the Sisters of Battle, and they're expanding on their kind of existence by giving us I don't know necessarily how you're supposed to pronounce it, but essentially Adeptus Sororitas Scouts is fundamentally what it looks like, right? The kind of lighter armored, the neophytes, if you will, or they call them the Novita. No, how am I supposed to pronounce that, Phil?
I'm just trying to look where they actually. Novatites.
Novatites. We'll go with that. That's almost certainly wrong.
Or novitiates. Like
Novitiates.
Initiates meets novices. Novitiates maybe is the word it will be.
But I mean, from a sister's perspective in terms of what they're adding here and the way the kind of squad looks and so on. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'll be honest. I've got mixed emotions about it. I think the it's strange, I suppose, because the only element that is seemingly missing from these guys in terms of the sort of silhouette and the visual is the power packs.
Yeah.
So these guys don't have the power packs
because they've not got power armor. Yeah.
Yeah, but then the armor itself doesn't really look remarkably different.
Yeah, the way the cloaks fall down between the legs and the boots, and they've still got the shoulder pads, all look very similar. And then the hoods that they wear, like the nun's habit, is very much like, is it the Hospitaller, the medic one? I think she's got something similar. So they've taken visual cues from a lot of other models. So it does look like sisters while being not like sisters at the same time.
Yeah, which I suppose in a way is actually a really sensible way of going about it, because when you actually go and look at the sisters minis, you obviously appreciate that they've obviously got the full kind of armor over their legs and their just their legs, really. And then there's obviously some differences with regards to the torsos and you know, they've got that kind of leather sort of corset element on the power armored version of them, but then it's obviously got like other kind of armor plating that runs throughout it, whereas for these minis they've just got kind of that leather armor all over. So it's a really interesting decision to sort of go for, I suppose.
And what's more interesting is they don't have bolt guns. They've got what look like auto pistols in terms of the actual pistol weapons they've got. And, you know, some guardsmen do have auto pistols. The veterans guardsmen in the new kill team have them. But to me, it always feels like bolt weapons should really be reserved for like power armored weapons, because they've got the ability to actually fire the weapons and hold them because they're so massive. I do say that, and I've noticed one of them has the really strange version of the bolt gun. I can't remember what pattern it is, where it's got like a crossbow built in. So only a couple have ever had this. So there's the Greyfax was the first one.
But that doesn't actually look like it's the bolt gun, mate. That just looks like it is the crossbow. No. There's no bolt gun component to it.
Unless it's above and we can't see it because of the angle.
No, I don't think it is, because you would have a sort of bolt gun actual magazine.
I think you're right. Yeah, so it is a new type of. I mean,
it's just the crossbow component of the bolt gun crossbow that Greyfax uses.
Yeah, it's weird. So this unit, they don't say that it's for 40k, whereas the Tau one, they specifically call out this is a new Pathfinder team, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But for these guys, it's weird that if they were for 40k, they weren't included in the codex for sisters, because that is only a few months old. And I get that, because they always do stuff like this. They give you a codex, and then, 6 months down the line or a year down the line, they give you more units. That's fair enough. But this is right off of the bat of that codex. If you're a guy, if they do become, available for 40k as a sisters player, I can imagine you'd be really frustrated, because it's yet another campaign book you're clearly going to have to buy to get rules for these. That will be the third supplement effectively that you'll have to have for sisters, because they've already got it wasn't the Octarius one, it was the one prior to
it was the Book of Fire.
Yeah, so for Charadon, that's it. Warzone. So this potentially is coming in
words.
But this doesn't look like a squad. Like, it looks like a kill team, which is what I think is fantastic about this. Like, the veteran guardsmen just look like a standard 40k squad. And yes, there's kind of cool upgrades for some of them, but they don't look as unique as the commandos did. Whereas these ladies look fantastic. Each one is a unique model. They all kind of look like characters. They've all got kind of elements of squads. So one of them's got the massive, is it Repentia chainsword? You've got a standard bearer, which looks very similar to one of the existing standard bearers. Obviously, you've got that weird crossbow thing. That's new. The mace is like I'm trying to think of their name.
What, on the crossbow mace?
No, sorry. If you go to the next image across, there's a lady with a big mace that's got a censure in it, which is like the dogmata, is it? I think.
Yeah, the Van Gogh one.
Yeah, the one that we never liked. There's one holding a chalice. I mean, there's one with the whip.
This is great potential for a new mini for the old Dogmata or whatever.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, I mean, you could, just take the arms off and do an arm swap, because obviously you'd want
just put a power pack on the back of that model and call it a day. I'd say.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, so you have people with whips in the sisters, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And people holding up. I mean, the sword one is relatively unique. And then the one with the staff and scroll and the speakers, that's... Oh, I'm trying to think if they have something similar.
They do, yeah, they do. It's what is that particular model called? It's it's one of the command options where she's holding up some scrolls and yelling with a mace held up in the air.
Yeah, that's not the
very, very sort of similar in terms of visual. Oh, here it goes. The Dialogus.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very Dialogus-esque. And it's quite interesting because it's it kind of appears when you kind of go through this, it's almost like these are the various kind of people in training for their different kind of functions. It's almost like
maybe that's what it is, because aren't these meant to be teaching the sisters? So these are like the different aspects of the sort of sisters' way of life.
No, is that what it is? So this is essentially them all having to, dabble with different forms of sisters combat. So you've got your person with the big chainsaw, which is, I guess, she's aspiring to one day have to be a repentia, which I believe was sort of linked to them having, been a bit naughty, but clearly not now. It's just sort of a thing.
Yeah, because it says on the blog, it says these lighter armed and armored teams train aspirants for many of the Adeptus Sororitas minor orders, and they carry a wide variety of holy relics into battle. So yeah, it feels like it is different aspects of the Sisters Army. And there's even like the one that does have a power pack is like what I can only describe as a cardinal with a fancy hat, and all red, and actually does have power armor and a power sword of some kind. Like, that's a fantastic mini. So I don't know. Yeah, it feels like I can't see how this is a squad in 40k that would work. It's the equivalent of Gaunt's Ghosts, right? It's every mini is unique and is a character in its own right.
How did Gaunt's Ghost, by the way, not end up a kill team?
I mean, I don't know.
How did they miss that trick out of the gate? Have they done rules for Gaunt's Ghost as a kill team?
No, I wouldn't be surprised if they do it in White Dwarf at some point. In fact, they haven't done it yet. It is a bit mad. So in the new White Dwarf that's come out as we speak, I got mine today in the post. It's got a new kill team for Adeptus Mechanicus, and it's got a ton of data sheets for literally pretty much every unit that you would think would be, so not breaches and stuff like that. I haven't read it yet, but that one looks quite interesting in terms of how you build it. So Adeptus Mechanicus already exists in the compendium, but the compendium is very dry in terms of what you take. This is very much like the new kill teams in terms of you've got like a ton of stratagems. Each one has a bunch of abilities, so it does unlock like the Orc Commandos or the Veteran Guardsmen. You've got 10 different options that you can have in your fire team, as opposed to I've got to take 5 of the same generic thing in my fire team, and I can have, maybe if I'm lucky, another fire team with another 2 or 3 or 4 generic things that have to be identical to each other. So it's weird that it's being put in White Dwarf, but I mean, great if you have access to the White Dwarf or a Warhammer Plus subscription and you're willing to wait 2 months, because it will be on there in no time at all. So yeah, hopefully Gaunt's Ghost does get a bit of love in that respect. And again, it feels like this unit should exist. If it is going to exist in 40k, it has to be in that kind of weird Gaunt's Ghosts sort of way where each one is a character and has some special rules to them.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I don't necessarily see him going that way because, again, it depends on what the functionality is of this kit. You know, I mean, if it is that, yeah, sure, they've, for the sake of Kill Team, put them together in all of their most kind of heroic variants. But if it is that you can, do something a bit more generic, then perhaps there is an opportunity for these to make their way into regular 40k, which I imagine they will do, right? There's no way that these won't have 40k rules, and they will definitely sell it in one of the expansions, right? That's just par for the course with this kind of thing.
I mean, just imagine if they don't, though. Imagine if they're like, this is just a Kill Team specific thing. And because
I would have a lot of respect for them if they did that.
Because
that'd be a good way of playing it.
Well, in a way, it's like it does free them up a lot more. Because, like we said, this is a bad fit for 40k because of the unit loadout. Each one's unique. It doesn't really fit in for 40k, but this is fantastic for Kill Team. This is what you want from a Kill Team. So to me, it's like, in a way, it's like props to them if they said, actually, no, this isn't for 40k, it's just for Kill Team. But do you know what? If you want to buy it and you want to turn that Cardinal Lady into your new HQ choice, if you want Repentia Lady, what I could see them do is maybe go, you can add this one model, this one with the Repentia chainsaw, into your Repentia squad, and it gives your squad a certain buff because they're leading that squad. Like, these are specialists, like specialist sergeants, so to speak. Like,
well, I don't think they're that senior though, mate. I think these are supposed to be like, again, they're supposed to be the trainees, aren't they?
No, so they're the ones. No, these are the ones training up people.
Oh, is this what they are?
Yeah,
so they're not trainees; they're actually trainers.
Yeah, so it says these teams train aspirants for the many orders of the sisters.
Oh, okay. So these are actually supposed to be
more like potentially seniors,
elite.
Yeah. But I guess you could, yeah. And
so why have they foregone all their power armor and stuff? That's something I'm not entirely understanding.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that they're meant to be more stealthy, or because they don't normally see combat because they're training people up. But I could see them going, they want to be a bit more stealthy, so they're not wearing power armor. But because if they did the logic of they don't make them for 40k, think how much freedom that gives them for doing custodes kill teams, or Space Marine kill teams, because they don't have to worry about how are we going to write rules for this. Now, the Orc Commandos is a really good kill team, but also works really well in 40k. And they might just make each of these the commando equivalent for that army.
Yeah.
Because I could see them. That's what the veteran guard is going to be, I think. But I'd also quite happily if they didn't. But they're just alternative sculpts. If you want to pick them up and convert up some characters or models out of them, by all means. Yeah, like they're cool.
Nice.
They're cool, but I wouldn't care less if they were in 40k or not. It'd be cool if they gave them rules, but it'd be ballsy but cool if they didn't.
Yeah,
for different reasons.
Yeah. I think, again, I'd like to see him kind of leave him alone, but I think there's a lot of Sisters players out there right now who will be chomping at the bit to obviously run them as a kill team, but also just to sprinkle them into their existing Sisters armies. And again, it depends, right? Because these kind of units, much like the commandos, right? Like, no one's going to be using a commando squad in competitive 40k because it just doesn't play to the kind of optimizational aspirations of units within a game of 40k. But at the end of the day, for the people out there who want to do that sort of thing, it's good to give them the option, I suppose. But
yeah, and I mean, when you say competitive 40k, you are talking about like that kind of real competitive, like proper tournament scene where you min-max everything. It's like a Death Watch veteran squad where you can load out shotguns and the flamer and the grenade launcher. Like, they're all really cool, but no one ever does that because everyone goes, well, storm shields and whatever other option is the best thing, so you take just them. And the cool aspect of those kill teams just doesn't really work in that kind of environment. But in friendly games, narrative games, that's where these models would really shine. And I hope they do see see some use in competitive, but as you say, competitive tends to lean into that slightly drier aspect of, point and shoot, or point and just sit on an objective.
Well, it's just it's more about kind of uniformity, isn't it? You want units that perform certain functions, and having that kind of skirmish ideology. The idea that you're going to have a bunch of versatile models with different functions. It's just not the nature of that larger scale game. Which I guess in a way kind of moves on quite seamlessly, if not a little bit contrived, to the Pathfinders, which, if I'm honest with you, I mean, in so much as obviously you weren't insanely thrilled when you saw the Krieg in plastic, I'm not in any way thrilled to see a new version of a perfectly good squad that already exists in plastic. It's like, I mean, there are some lovely sculpts in here. There's some lovely, new heads and, some new elements, but it feels like a real own goal to, I mean, like, obviously they couldn't, well, they could have, but obviously it would have felt really off if they'd just gone, where you go, guys, it's just the existing Pathfinder, box.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and the thing is, these Pathfinders, as I sort of go through them, they're objectively better in varying ways to the existing ones, and they've obviously, to make them a kill team, they've done the, given the kill team kind of preferences. So you've got the medic guy with his medi kit, and then you got the guy with the sort of big gun next to him that's got some weird kind of like muscly arm. Have you seen that one?
Oh, the guy with a muscly arm? No, I haven't.
He's got like a cybernetic sort of weird muscly arm. So like, if you look at the picture of the medic, have you found the medic?
I don't. I'm looking.
He's in the top left with all of his weird sort of like blue cylinder medical gun things.
Yes.
To the right of him is a guy with quite a big gun, and he's got like some sort of weird arm that doesn't have the same shoulder guard that you would, the same kind of, is it pauldrons or whatever, but the same shoulder guard that you would expect from the Pathfinder. He's got some weird muscly arm.
I think that's just the angle, like it's sort of leaning backwards, so the pauldron bit is hidden.
No, I don't think that is the case. I think it literally is a completely different style of arm from what the rest of them have. Maybe it's been battle damaged or something. Maybe he's had it sort of blown off or something in the conflict, but because he does look quite war torn. But the other thing I'll say about these is they've given them even bigger heads now. So the one helmeted option looks ridiculous. He looks like he looks like he's got comedy proportions. He doesn't look any good at all.
Yeah, is it because they're sort of squatting down, or is it like a sort of scale issue? I can't honestly tell if this is, because they say it's an update to the existing Pathfinder kit. So are parts of it the original kit, and they've given you like an upgrade sprue to add in these extra weapon options to take it from a standard infantry squad to like a veteran infantry squad, a bit like how the veteran Krieg kit has a couple of sprues, which is the standard squad. And then you've got the upgrade sprue, which is, here's all the kind of cool bits like the medical pack, the flare gun and stuff like that. I believe that's all a separate sprue, so that it's a specific upgrade kit that could be sold together, but it is separate if you don't need it. And I assume that's a similar thing here, where they've done a bit of Acadian thing where maybe it's like, here's some new heads and some, but also like an upgrade sprue where it's, here's some new arms and weapon options, but are the legs and torsos the originals, which is why you might get that weird scale issue perhaps.
So I am just looking at the old Pathfinders, and now I am cross-referencing the new Pathfinders. Yeah, so it is highly possible that what you've just said there is correct, Phil. I think we might be looking at a upgrade, not a completely entirely new kit.
Yeah, it's weird. So this is very much like this is for 40k sort of first and foremost, but with a little bit of tweaking, we can make it work for Kill Team. Whereas it feels like the Sisters, it's like that feels like it was first and foremost made for Kill Team, 40k secondary, if at all. And maybe they'll be doing that for every faction, and it's just going to be potluck as to which one you get. Will you get an upgrade sprue, or will you be getting a completely brand new unit? Because Sisters of Silence, for example, they could give you a brand new unit, but they could just be like, here's some new weapon options, like for arms, but the base kit is so flexible, we're just going to keep using that, which I think would be a shame if they did it for them, because they don't really have many units anyway. But they could go down that route.
Yeah, like doing a Sisters of Silence style Kill Team would be fantastic. But yeah, no, this, I don't know. Because again, right, in terms of what they've added to this kit, in terms of flexibility, obviously they've added some new eds, which is fine, good to get some new eds. They've got a bit more kind of expression, I guess, and a bit more kind of, a bit more diversity in terms of the types of faces they have. But it's Tau, right? It makes sense that they came up with some upgrades for the Cadian like guardsmen, because they're human beings, and as human beings we can obviously notice and understand some of those subtle differences between the different styles of faces or the different styles of everything. It's just that thing where it sort of makes sense with the Cadians, but this just feels utterly pointless. Like I just don't get it. I don't understand why.
Well, I mean, if you're a Tau player, you might think it's fantastic, and
I don't think you would. I mean, maybe they would. I mean, maybe it's a new type of gun for your Pathfinders, which is potentially cool. But I don't know. I mean, the fact you get a medic, I guess. I mean, obviously, if the medic adds something interesting, and that's going to be fun, I suppose. But I mean, generally, it's like, I think, again, much like obviously what the Sisters players have received, I'm sure the Tau players would have much preferred. I'll be honest. I'm sure they would have probably preferred a Kroot Kill Team to this.
Well, Kroot is a separate faction in Kill Team, so there will be a Kroot Kill Team at some point, no doubt.
Yeah,
I reckon.
Yeah, true.
True. So it's like they can have both. This is a weird one where it's a bit like and with the Krieg one, I was a bit indifferent for many reasons, but it is that thing of it just looks like a 40k team, and they've said it's Kill Team, and that is what this one looks like. It's 40k first and foremost. Yeah, who knows how those rules will translate to 40k? We've not seen it for the Krieg team, the veteran guardsmen, and we've not really seen it here yet. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it goes both ways. But again, I'd much rather a super unique one where every person is totally different, looks really different. Like the Sisters one, to me, they've knocked it out of the park. It looks really great.
Incredible.
Same with York Commandos, fantastic. And then
one of the best kits they've done ever. The York Commandos is almost flawless.
Veteran Guardsman and this Tau one just don't seem to be as interesting. And I think that's partly because they paint themselves into a corner because of the lore. So it's like if Pathfinders are that kind of scouty Kill Team type person, they already exist, and they can't really create like another units to represent Kill Teams if that's what these are meant to be. But also Tau are really generic in uniform, as are the Krieg. They're meant to all look the same, so you can't have that kind of flair of individuality that you kind of want in a Kill Team. So I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and it's like, in terms of what they need to do is this, but this isn't as interesting as what we want.
Yeah. It's also really interesting that they've led with the Tau on the cover of the game, because again, the Tau to me is the least interesting of the forces that they're offering you. But I suppose visually, when you see the sci-fi super soldier that is a Tau Pathfinder with its, kind of anime inspired aesthetic, I do understand that that's a cool piece of art. But it's a shame because it's a cool piece of art, but the models are just eh. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is the thing. Within the context of Warhammer 40,000, these are competent, nice to have sculpts. But within the context of Kill Team and what they're up against with the Commandos and the now, Sisters, I'm just a bit underwhelmed. I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. Tau.
Well, I can see why they've led with them, because I think Sisters have had a lot of love recently. Like they've had limited edition box sets. They've had, their codex come out, a whole range of new models. Tau hasn't really.
They've all been objectively very successful though, as well, though, right? So it's weird as well, because you would have thought that having because Sisters have performed and sold really well for GW from what you can observe. Obviously, GW doesn't issue any kind of sales reports or anything, but Sisters have seemingly been very, very popular, so intriguing. But I don't know, I think it's one of those things. It's like, as a Kill Team box set thing, the Sisters are great and they're going to do great, and I think the Tau have an audience, and I think people who are Tau collectors will be excited to add these to their collection. But regardless of that, I'm just a little bit like, yeah, it's all right, I guess. And then the Kill Team sort of battlefield itself, again, you're kind of, what's the size of these play surfaces for Kill Team? Are they 22 by 30?
I'm going to say yes, but I don't.
No, because that's half the 40k.
No, it should. I think it's a third, isn't it? Isn't it? No, 4 of them make a full size. Is it 4 or was it a third? I can never remember.
Well, would that be right? Because if it was 22, so yeah, so if you put the two 22s together, you get 44, and then you put the two 30s together, you get 60. Yeah, because you're going to need the 244 things. So you got to go. Yeah, so that is right. There's 22. There's 2230, right?
Yeah, it must be. So they are small, but they're meant to be.
Yeah, which is fine. I don't mind the board size being small. I think, again, it's just that thing where it's like giving you the Sector Imperialis ruins is totally fine. I mean, it looks fine.
Well, I would rather have this terrain. And I said, I struggle with space, but I've got this type of terrain from the original Kill Team.
It's good terrain.
So I would rather have more of this. So if this was with the Orcs and Guard, I would have bought that box set, because it's like, then it's much more value for money in terms of what I personally want. With this, it's like, I don't really want Sisters or Tau, but it's like, if that is cheap ruins terrain, then that's better for me, because I've got enough to have a decent amount on a Kill Team board, but having a couple more pieces like they've got here would be fantastic for a much more denser game of Kill Team.
How do they account for vertical distances in Kill Team? Do we know? Because what I understand is you have to move the distance of the marker. So if your movement is one circle, then you have to move the breadth of the circle.
Yeah.
But the circle, as I understand it, is only a 2-inch distance.
Yeah, but your move is normally 3 circle. So your move is 6 inches.
But the way that the game plays it is that you still only can move 3 circle. And then if it is one of those moves is a reduced move because you had to navigate around a corner or do something, it doesn't allow you to.
You can move in any increment you want. So your 3 circles can be broken down into. So you can do 1 triangle, which is 1 inch. So it's triangles are 1 inch, circles are 2 inch. No, or was it?
But if your move is 3 circle, it's basically you've got a 6-inch move, but it's divided up into increments of 2. So I was just curious how vertical distance works.
Yeah,
these
so
terrain features are
they're 5
5
inches. So you would have to. So you can to traverse a wall to do a climb move. You have to be within 1 triangle. So you got to be within 1 inch of it. you can then from that, even if you're not in base to base contact, you can move upwards. So you would do your free circle move. So you would go up 3, and you would basically get to the top. You'd basically not need that extra inch. So you actually move 2.5 circles. But that extra inch, because you have to move in straight lines, as far as I'm aware. Well, actually, it might be slightly different for climbing, but normally you have to move in straight
So
lines.
we need to read this rule book.
So
is what we're saying.
what I'm saying is, if you move over a distance and want to change direction, you just round up. So you're potentially moving just upwards is 6 inches, even though you only need to move 5. You then need to move one triangle, which is 1 inch, to move your model from floating in the sky to on the base. And to do that, you can do an extra dash move. So a dash move is a specific thing where you can move an extra circle. So it might be with this terrain, because it's much higher, you would always have to basically be very close. You'd have to basically be at least 2 inches away from it, do a sort of half move, so a triangle move, or 1 inch move to be within an inch, go up your 6 inches, but it's only 5, but you're rounding up, and then do another 1 inch move to be on it. So basically, this terrain isn't very.
I know we haven't read the rules extensively, but it sounds like they've nailed it, Phil. I mean, what's this?
Well, I think, the whole combat gauge with the measurements, while it is a bit difficult to explain off the top of my head, is fine. I read it and I got it. Like, I think here the problem is the terrain is actually a bit too high to make moving up as practical as it is with the Orc terrain, which I believe is only 5 inches. No, it's lower than this, so it's got to be 4 inches or thereabouts. So getting onto the terrain for the Orc stuff is a lot easier and more conducive for running up, jumping down, that sort of thing. I think that's almost one of the problems to an extent with the 40k rules, and why people don't like the vertical aspect of the terrain, because a 5-inch measurement is 90% of your movement. It's just not easy to get up high. Like back in the days, like even 2nd edition, 4th edition, when you had those, started off with paper ruins or cardboard ruins, and then you went on to puppet. It was like 3 inches high. It was like barely anything. It's like, that's half my movement. Super easy to go up onto some ruins and get a bit of verticality. Here, it's like your whole turn of movement, plus you got to probably spend an extra action to do the dash to give yourself extra movement to get on there. That's your whole turn. That's both your actions of the 2 that you can normally do.
Just getting up there.
So it might not be as practical, but I like it more than the Orc stuff.
No, I hear you. It's interesting as well that they've essentially just come out and gone, cool, we're going to sell you another 120 quid box set.
Yeah, that's the weird thing for me. It's like,
they are maximizing the impact of these releases, because the people who can't resist will go out and buy this, and they'll buy it en masse, and they're basically doing it because they probably want the sisters or the Tau, and some people will break them down, but it's very shrewd on the old W side of things. If
you want to be a kill team player, imagine this is your game, and a bit like Blood Bowl, Necromunda, you're like, I want to collect all the teams. Like, it's not a good way of playing this. It's like, yes, I guess they're going to do those broken down boxes of the maybe you can buy the teams on their own, and I don't know from. Let me just double check when they talk about so you can buy the Commandos and Veteran Guardsmen. They are kill team boxes. They're not 40k boxes. So I'm guessing they're going to come with data sheets or data cards. But I don't know. That's just me speculating. I hope so, because then it's like, and you're probably paying a bit of premium, because it's like, I'm not just getting a 40k team. I'm getting a 40k team with kill team rules thrown in, which are extra bits of card. So that means it's probably they're going to sell it for more than they would if it was just a 40k team. I suspect. Because I was going to say, if you want to collect every team, and you have to buy these box sets to get them, the kill zone box sets, the war zone box sets, that's really expensive. Like, that doesn't feel fun. Like this isn't Underworlds where you're buying a 15 quid team, every few weeks. This is
yeah, but it's 40k, and 40k comes with an increased premium, my man.
yeah, I know.
For that 40k goodness.
This is the thing. It's like, and you said Octarius, like there were still copies floating around. And is it because they had announced these? And I was on the fence about buying Octarius because I was like, I want to see what the other kill teams are. Like if they're doing a Warzone, this Warzone, I'm trying to think. It's not Octarius. What is it called? This one, it was like Ventress or something in terms of where it was. Charmath is like, if this comes with, you're going to have a core rule book, you're going to have your kill team Charnath book as well, which is specific. You're going to have all your tokens, your dice. It's basically a full-on starter box plus, like like who's this aimed at? Like if someone wanted to get into kill team, they've already bought the Octarius one. And if they miss that, they can buy the starter set. So if you're...
It's aimed at people who buy everything, Phil. That's who it's aimed at.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's preying on your lack of control.
Like, to me, it would almost feel like it would make more sense to be like, here's a new kill zone. Here's the terrain as a separate thing. And the teams you can buy separately and the book you can buy separately. Because if you want to...
They will do that down the road, or they will continue to do that. But again, I think this is the thing. It's like...
It's like mini bundle deals, but it's going to be like every few months. It's a bit like the 40K
I will admit it.
They've
burned me out. They've burned me out on these boxes. I'm done with it now. I didn't buy Kill Team box set. Just bought the rule book and went, cool, I'll just use my Primaris Marines if I ever get around to playing Kill Team. Because I bought everything for Kill Team 2018 or whatever it was called, the one that was released for alongside 8th edition. Didn't play any of it, but I bought it all because I was like, oh yeah, Kill Team. I bought Rogue Trader, I bought Arena, I bought Elite, I bought all of it, and I've used next to none of it. So yeah, even if they released a Kill Team with models that I was legitimately interested in, I genuinely feel like I wouldn't be that bothered at the moment because gone are the days of where I'm buying all this stuff because it's too numerous. The fact that literally, the last Kill Team box is barely a week or 2 or 3 weeks old or whatever it is. It's like barely a month old. There you go. And already I'm told, yeah, don't worry about that one. This one's the new one.
I know. Well, this is the thing. So they've said they're going to do one every 3 months, but I think weirdly due to the release cycle, or maybe due to COVID, it was effectively the release schedule for Octarius. It came out right at the end. So, and we said it at the time when they talked about and they announced the roadmap for Kill Team. It's like, well, next month is the start of the next 3 months for the next kill zone, and lo and behold, it is the next month, and right off the bat they've given us this. So the next one after this, assuming this, they've revealed it now, but it probably won't come out for another month or so, and then it'll be another month of nothing, and then they're announced the next one, then you wait a month, then you get it. So there's basically every 2 months there'll be a new kill team of some sorts, and I think it's not aimed at, well, there will be people that will just buy every single one, which is madness.
Oh yeah, of course.
I think they've gone, we're going to do these, and if a faction entices you, if you collect sisters, you'll probably buy this kit. Although weirdly, if the Krieg and Orcs are coming out only in a month or 2 time, are you that desperate for that new unit that for 40k that you'll buy a bundle deal with, a bunch of terrain and rules that you might already own? Because this is the thing, this isn't aimed at people that have bought Octarius, because it's like, you've got the rules, you don't need the rules again. Or if you do, you're just doing it knowing you're going to try and flog that because you just want the benefits of the bundle deal. Like you go, I want the terrain, or I can use the terrain. I want at least one kill team bonus if I collect both armies. Then you want both of them. But yeah, so I think it's either for people that haven't yet got into kill team, but they're waiting for their faction, or they just want people to buy whatever faction relates to them. Because that's why I sort of held out from Octarius. So I was like, I want to see what the other factions are, and if there's one that are like more.
I want Pariah Nexus to be good. That's what I want.
Yeah, it's been and gone.
I know. That was a hard pill to swallow.
I mean, imagine what the Necron kill team's going to be like. That'll be. Do you think it'll be the snipery ones? It'll just be an upgrade.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? They're not called Death Shroud. They're called like God,
Are they not Death Shroud?
Death Marks.
Death Marks.
Death Marks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would be awesome. I would approve of that. Still wouldn't buy it, but it would be cool. All right, there you go. So, I mean, the ever-evolving world of Kill Team or, new swanky models to talk about. I think that was, quite entertaining, all things considered. At some point in the future, myself and Phil will actually do a broader review of the game of Kill Team. But for now, I guess we'll move on to whatever it is that comes next. Transitional noise. Woo! Welcome back, everyone. In this part of the podcast, myself and Phil are going to procrastinate, such as our want, on the topic of Forge World and the game of Warhammer 40,000. Obviously, those of you who are familiar with Forge World, you understand them, you know them, potentially love them. Probably not so much in love with their pricing, but, c'est la vie. Understand that they have pivoted into the world of specialist gaming these days. Gone, it seems, is their commitments to supporting the broader Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar ranges. What's the next one they got on the horizon? It's Old World, isn't it? That's like the big new fresh thing they're working on, right?
Old World and Cafe that they've announced this week as well, which actually looks pretty exciting.
The Cafe,
i.e. fantasy Chinese.
Oh yes, the Total War free thingamabib.
Yes, but all the units and all the designs were done by the Warhammer team. And if you notice, there's a lot of similarities. So they did, what was it, the Norse? Not quite the Norse. The people from the Ice World up north.
Polar bear people.
The polar bear people were what the sort of
that
first...
aren't themselves polar bear people, but they mount polar bears.
That's it.
Kislev.
They were announced as effectively the Warhammer Old World faction that they're doing, but they feature heavily in Warhammer Total War 3. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit of a test ground to try and release Warhammer Total War 3 and then either simultaneously or not too far off the hills of it, a Warhammer Old World game featuring those same iconic armies, especially since they're completely brand new ones. So you're not redoing.
Can you call them iconic when they're brand new?
Well, they're iconic in terms of they've always existed in the lore. I mean, Kislev is pretty iconic, I would say. Cafe is one of those things in the background, but you've never really seen. I mean, this is not the Forge World chat that we were having, but they are busy, yes, doing other projects.
No, indeed, Phil. But that does actually give context to what potentially is going on with Forge World, and ultimately then helps kind of preface our conversation on the topic of, is Forge World potentially done with supporting Warhammer 40,000 and conversely Age of Sigmar? Not that we worry about Age of Sigmar in these places, because, I think one of the things that was always really interesting with Forge World throughout time has been the fact that it has been a really interesting environment that has expanded the Warhammer 40,000 hobby. And it's something that I personally have really valued, even though I've never been, until recently, the most active consumer of Forge World products. But it's interesting, right? Because Forge World's in a really strange place at the moment, because it is seemingly kind of being, phased out while also being incredibly popular for various reasons, right? So we're in this strange crossroad, right? Because we now have Plastic Krieg, which is something I don't think you ever imagined would ever have been a reality, right, Phil?
No, not in my wildest imaginations.
Exactly. I mean, you obviously sell yourself very short in terms of your lofty dreams and ambitions, but regardless, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, it's just an interesting time because there's lots of things going on, and Games Workshop have always had this interesting synergy with Forge World and how they've approached things. They have quite consistently taken Forge World concepts and, realized them in the Citadel range. I'm struggling to think of examples off the top of my head beyond the Tau Piranha. But I know there are more than just a Tau Piranha.
Like a lot of the Imperial Guards, like the flyers, so the like Vendetta and
Was the
Valkyrie.
Vendetta originally Forge World, was it?
Yeah, there's a resin kit that you can still occasionally see floating around on eBay. So there was a resin kit, and then the Valkyrie stayed as a conversion kit. So you buy the las cannon optional extras once the plastic kit came out. There was many iterations of Bane blades that were all resin, and now even to this day you can get like those kind of part resin hybrid kits for things like the Storm blades.
Wasn't the Bane blade a weird one that was never actually ever a proper Forge World mini, but rather another company that was called Forge World that wasn't Forge World?
Yeah, well, to start off with, I mean, going back into the lofty depths of time, you had Armorcast, I believe, was the very first iteration of it, which was
like a North American.
Yeah, it was like an American company that was producing it under license. Then you had, I think, another company later on that was called Forge World that was still another American company doing it under license. And then eventually I think we had the UK company also called weirdly Forge World, which was, the actual, UK Games Workshop sort of offshoots that was like a sort of headed off as like its own sort of sister company to Games Workshop to produce these, because I think in America there was a lot of demand for the ones that they did the the Warhound Titan. They did a couple of the Tyranid big bugs. I'm gonna say horror specs, but I could be completely misconstruing that. And then I think it was Baneblade Shadow Sword. I think they did for Imperial guard vehicles. So they did a bunch, and I think that was a good proof of concept to show that they were popular enough, and the process of like the resin casting is profitable at kind of a low volume. So the reason why it's in resin is because the setup costs are much lower than plastic. Plastic, you need to create a metal mold for the injection molding process, which is super expensive. It's 10,000 plus pounds to get those made. Whereas you can make a silicone mold for like 50 quid or 100 quid or whatever, like pretty cheap. But the plastic injection stuff is all automated, so it's super cheap. Like each sprue is pennies, like they're dirt cheap. Whereas resin casting, you've got the cost of the resin, which I think is slightly more expensive, but it's a manual process. It's not up until pretty much the last year or so, where you have started to see automated processes for it. It's pretty much like hand cast. I believe Games Workshop do something similar to spin casting, which is similar to what they did with the old metal minis, but using resin. Whether they actually do that or not, I'm not sure. But that's what a lot of the automated stuff now do, which I also don't think Games Workshop or Forge World use. So it's cheaper outlay initially, but it's labor intensive, which is why it's more suitable for smaller runs. So that's why Forge World delved into these really like bespoke, like big minis, like the super heavies, but also like really unique pieces that are interesting and adding some extra depth for Warhammer World. But they're not really meant to be mainstay staples of someone's army, which is really, I think, what it's now become for a lot of units. So a lot of the weird things you had back in the day, you had like the Trojan, or you had like a carriage attachment to like a Chimera. Like you had like a little cargo transport that you could go on the back of your vehicles to like tow crates around. It's like doesn't really have much in-game use. I'm sure they did have rules for them, but they're just really cool, like thematic things that I think a lot of collectors, even to this day, are still after, because they're great pieces to add to your army, even if it's just going to sit on your shelf and you're not going to use it in a game.
Yeah, man. I think that's the thing, though, isn't it? It's sort of like, in terms of contributing to the overall world building, as you said, I think that's what Forge World obviously did and made so really, fantastic for those really die-hard hobbyists, was the ability to obviously bring to life these gigantic, monstrous creatures and war machines, but also those little finesses and those little details and those ideas that they want to explore. And I think that's always been the really clever side of, the GW business as a whole, leaning on Forge World for more of the kind of experimental gaming systems and exploring those ideas. I mean, obviously, we can't ignore the Horus Heresy shaped elephant in the room when it comes to talking about Forge World. And that, in a lot of ways, has really kind of sealed their fate as an entity that can kind of create these really incredible, really expansive, but ultimately quite specialized gaming products. And, the Horus Heresy is still now an incredibly well supported, incredibly beloved gaming system. A system that, truth be told, we don't do nearly enough justice on this podcast, given that the rate of 40k content is so absurdly vast that it's, difficult enough to keep on top of that side of things. But when you look at Heresy and what Heresy has essentially done for Forge World, it's been transformative in terms of what that business has been and what it's sort of pivoted into.
Yeah,
gone are the
it's totally changed the face of how Forge World operates. In a way, it's kind of killed off Forge World from what it was, which was kind of bespoke, interesting elements supporting the 40k and a lesser extent fantasy / Age of Sigma ranges with like one-off units, campaign books. It's like Horus Heresy killed all of that off because Horus Heresy was so popular. It was effectively kind of, to an extent, I think it's like broken Forge World from what it was, because they just couldn't keep up with the demand they couldn't keep up with the demand of the models and the kits for Horus Heresy, so they're always prioritizing those over the 40k stuff, but also in terms of the output of the rules. So we saw them trying to do all the Horus Heresy Black books, which is their campaign books. But in doing so, we sort of never really then saw much in the way of the 40k campaign books. I mean, it was basically all going well up until two things happened pretty much in the same year. One, Alan Bly died. He was like the head writer for Forge World and was doing pretty much all the campaign books. He was like the lead writer behind Forge World, behind Horus Heresy, as far as I'm aware. Obviously, other people did contribute to those books, but I think he was kind of like he had a lot of it all going on in his head. And then at the other same time, you also had 8th edition drop, which, as far as I'm aware, was a bit of a bombshell news flash to the people at Forge World as well. So they were all struggling to then suddenly have to rewrite all the rules for the Forge World 40k models to make sure they were all compatible. And basically, it was interesting, and we talked about it before in previous episodes. Basically, even at the Warhammer Fest, where they announced 8th edition, they did still announce Fires of Syraxis, which was meant to be the next 40k campaign book. And they were like, we're going to do it for 8th edition, even though it was originally written for 7th edition. And as far as I'm aware, it was meant to either be mostly done or it was just still in its early sort of stages of writing. But the Warhammer Fest website, which like the post on Warhammer Community, which is still up there, has a load of like really cool like artwork for it, like the kind of classic Forge World style artwork where it's like photography overlaid with sort of special effects and Photoshop. They've done a bunch for that book, so it must have been some way on, and that book just got canned and it never seen the light of day since, which is a real shame, I think. And I think it was just because they were struggling to do the Horus Heresy books, but also just, keep up with the demand for 40k stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think, at the time, it was really interesting because I remember talking to a guy from Forge World at that time, and, there was a lot of general kind of weirdness around the notion of, will Horus Heresy become based on the 8th edition system? And I remember them having to basically do like a seminar at that Warhammer Fest where they basically came out and said, we're not adopting the 8th edition style. We're going to stay within the confines of what was at the time the 7th edition and has now kind of gone on to become the Horus Heresy edition. And who knows what that will turn into once the heavily rumored, to the point of it not really being a rumor anymore, new Horus Heresy box set comes later in the year. Because I think that's going to be really interesting for them, is like what direction they take that in. Because I think Games Workshop have obviously observed a certain level of success with 40k and the implementation of certain ideas, and I do see that being quite consistently baked into other rule systems. I think one of the charms of Heresy is that it isn't 8th edition, and that's one of the things I like about it, is that it's not the same game. And I've heard great things about the range of games that they have. I mean, of all the Forge World games, the only ones I've played are Blood Bowl
Great
and
game.
Horus Heresy. Blood Bowl's phenomenal. Horus Heresy, I haven't played new Blood Bowl, full transparency. I haven't played that. And obviously Horus Heresy I haven't played in years. And when I was playing Horus Heresy, it was basically just 7th edition, so it wasn't really the same. But I've heard incredible things about Adeptus Titanicus. I mean, extraordinary things about Adeptus Titanicus. That is a game that really feels like it needs an absolute, shed load of support, because it's probably, for those who are in the know, Adeptus Titanicus is consistently remarked upon as being the best game Games Workshop have. But no one obviously really plays it extensively, except obviously for those who do, but not to the same extent as obviously 40k. Then they've got Necromunda, which is looking, it looks incredible, but at the same time, me and Phil were talking about this the other day. Not my Necromunda, right, Phil? Not my Necromunda.
Yeah, it's interesting, because a similar thing that we were talking about was something that James Hewitt, who was the original writer of the new Necromunda, which is I think 2016. Was it 20? Yeah, I think Blood Bowl was 2014. Necromunda was 2016. He did both. He's since left Games Workshop and is now quite open on Twitter, talking about his views and what happened sort of back in the day. And one of the things that he talked about, which is the same thing that we sort of feel about Necromunda, is, to me, because I remember playing the original Necromunda, it should be really sort of down and dirty, quite gritty. It's gangs struggling to survive, low on cash, like ammo should be rare. Guns should basically be, las guns, shotguns, auto guns. That should be the mainstay of weapons. Very kind of Mad Max-esque in terms of the sort of post-apocalyptic punk sort of future view of the world. You were saying, I think a couple of days ago, like, a bolt gun should be like almost like a sacred thing that's like one of the best weapons in the game. And, things like plasma and melter guns, like super rare, but like game changing when you can get hold of it, but super dangerous to use. And I think to an extent that is very much what the principles of the original game of Necromunda was. And then the new edition was very much pushed in this kind of every gang is actually part of a larger house, and those houses are very well supplied. They've all got access to really crazy technology. You look at Van Saar, they've got technology that outstrips the Astra Militarum by miles. They've got technology that's better than the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Space Marines. It's like they've got these sort of hobgoblin style floaty boards that they can ride around on. And the latest thing they revealed this week is this giant kind of walker mech suit that kind of crazy looking, but like super crazy tech. It doesn't really feel like it fits within the 40k universe because of it, because it's so esoteric and so strange, which I think is when we were coming at it is like, it's cool, but also not sort of what I want out of Necromunda. And that was apparently one of the reasons why I think James left, or at least, you know, one of his grumblings was he was getting a lot of pushback because he actually didn't like the direction that Necromunda was going in, because he didn't want it to be that. And I can see why they did want it to be like that, because it makes every gang much more unique. Every gang has a very stylistic individual vision, not just based on how they look and how they play, but also all the weapons and equipment that they have access to. Because otherwise it's, one gang's in steel suits, another gang's got mohawks, there's a gang of ladies, but otherwise they're all sort of carrying the same weapons, and that isn't what I think they want it to be, whereas maybe that's what the original Necromunda was.
Yeah, I think as well, obviously it's a benefit of the era, right? Like, obviously the level of technical competency when it comes to the sculpting techniques, but also the, you know, just the resources that obviously they have access to. I think very early doors with the Necromunda game, they were very much you know, holding true to that original spirit. And I think there were some interesting, you know, like new ideas being thrown at it, and the way they kind of chose to depict the gangs was really interesting. But like, yeah, like most of the stuff they did originally was like really, really amped up versions of the old gangs, but then they were adding in more kind of beasts or more
they've added like a big they've added like a pet pretty much for a lot of the gangs, not all of them, and they've added like a big boy, big monster style unit. So the Goliaths have got that like stimmed up Super Hulk where he's like really jacked up, and then Van Saar have got this kind of crazy mech. Obviously you got the Ambots, which anyone can have access to, and stuff like that. So it feels like they're trying to make each one like a little army, a codex from the new House of books. So that is like your codex. So I think, because one of our fans was actually asking me a couple of days ago, like, oh, do you think, you know, I really want to play Necromunda, but I'm too busy right now. Do you think I should get into it? And I was like, they're going to support that forever. That is, to me, like a staple. So back in the day when Games Workshop produced Necromunda and Games Workshop produced Blood Bowl, it was like a very limited cycle. Once they produced all the teams, there wasn't much more they could do about it. And then, you know, there'd be the odd supplement here and there like Death Zone. But it sort of runs out of steam, and then they kind of shelve it. And then you didn't see another edition for like 4 or 5 years when they bring it back. Whereas now I feel like they want to forever keep these going. They want to constantly drip feed content, and which is why you initially got 2 gangs in a box, and people were furious with both Blood Bowl and Necromunda going, where's all the other gangs? I want them straight away. And basically those games weren't really truly complete in the kind of classic sense of how people remember playing them for at least a year to 2 years, which is when they finally released all the Blood Bowl teams, finally released all the Necromunda teams. But it's like that takes time to develop and design, write the rules for. So I sort of like that drip feed process, but at the same time it meant people that wanted the teams that you didn't easily have access to, you kind of had to wait around. But now they're sort of expanding it out with like hangers on for Necromunda, the sort of pets, the big guys. They're expanding the roster of what each gang will be, and I'm sure they come up with new gangs as well as time goes on, because I think they just want it to be something they can constantly build on and add to.
Yeah I think that's the thing, though. I think the Necromunda game is going great guns. Blood Bowl, to your point as well, I think they've done some really great work with that recently, although bizarrely I can't be bothered to learn new Blood Bowl, in the sense that I'm just like, I just know how to play the last edition, and that's fine for me.
Yeah, I mean, both editions, I think the new one is easier than the last one, but Blood Bowl's quite a complicated game to get your head around. And it's such a different rule set from 40k. It's like, it's another bunch of rules that you got to try and remember in your head, especially if you want to play it on a regular basis. If you're the sort of person that just plays Blood Bowl, then you're kind of golden. It's, you know, pretty well supported. I think a lot of people might have been a bit gutted by like the sort of hard reset of the new edition, where it's like because they changed some of the stats, all the teams had to be redone effectively. But also, if you were like me, where I was collecting a lot of the card packs for the teams, it's like, well, they've all gone out the window because they're no longer valid. So, I mean, the 2014 version of Blood Bowl is sort of a nice sort of standalone thing now, but other than the miniatures, everything's now different.
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously they have as well Aeronautica Imperialis, which is terrible, in my opinion. Awful game.
Yeah, it's just never appealed to me as a game I want to play, and I'm sure there are some diehard fans that like it. And the concept, I loved X-Wing when that came out, and I played the first edition of that quite a bit, and then completely sort of lost interest for the second edition. And this is like X-Wing, but with 40k, so it should, in theory, tick an awful lot of boxes in terms of this should be a great game. It was an old game that Forge World used to produce, like back in the day. So it is an old specialist game, sort of being brought back. And as far as I'm aware, it was always a Forge World game, not a Games Workshop game. But I think it was around the period of time when I wasn't into, I was doing I'm off to university part of my life, so I wasn't that into or wasn't really following 40k or Forge World all that much. So I'm not necessarily sure exactly what was going on, but I believe that was the case.
Well, fair enough. But the point is that, there's that. And then I guess the real most consistent, I believe, kind of jewel in the crown for the Forge World guys, other than Horus Heresy. I think obviously it goes your Heresy, and then it's Middle Earth, right? Like Middle Earth is pretty big for Forge World, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, it's one of those ones where it's like it's still a Games Workshop game. It's not quite a specialist game. As far as I'm aware, I think Forge World just produced an awful lot of the models for it. But if you go to the Games Workshop website, they're the ones still doing the rules and stuff like that. So it's one of those ones where it's straddled. It's probably more supported in terms of a miniature output on a regular basis than Age of Sigma. It's like, how many actual Age of Sigma miniatures can you think that Forge World has produced for Age of Sigma?
What actual
like
Age of Sigma
new
miniatures
since for Fantasy / AOS since AOS 1 came out? I think the answer is like 1 or 2, and that was when the edition first came out. They might have produced a couple of things, but it's
I
not
don't
really
even necessarily feel like they did that, mate.
I mean,
I don't think that happened.
Oh, what? So they've got from on the front page, let's click on, let's prove we're not robots, and identify some planes or.
What is that with the Forge World website, by the way, that you have to prove that you're not a robot every time you go on it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's
like they don't want any customers. They're just like, go away. We don't want you here. Go now.
I know it's a bit of an odd one because it should be a similar, identical sort of back end to the Games Workshop website, but clearly isn't because of that one feature. Yeah, I mean, so there's the Dread Sauron, which is probably one of the newer kits, but I still think that came out in. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah, I think that came out around End Times. The Skarg the Bloodborne, the Great Korrigath of Khorne, I think he's one of the newer ones.
Is there Warpgnar Verminlord? Is he?
He's so he came back.
He
came back recently, but he was an old sculpt that went out of production, and then they sort of brought him back as a new one, which is why he's got a sort of like newish paint job.
That's why he's got photography with a Stormcast Eternal in it. That's what threw me there. I thought I'd found one, but no. And then you got the they brought back the Rogue Idol, didn't they? They brought that back.
Yeah,
that
was another classic. You can pre-order this thing that has existed for a long time.
Yes.
Sort of a sales piece. But yeah, I think because actually I think they discontinued a lot more, because I remember when AOS came out, they made a big song and dance about the Chaos Dwarves, because they produced a bunch of rules packs. Oh wait, look, here we go. We've got the Stormcast Eternals head upgrade kit.
Oh well, there we go. That's what they've given us
for male and females as 2 separate ones. And honestly, I think that's it. As it specifically AOS, definitely those two.
Definitely those two.
And that's it. But yeah, they did a bunch of rules when they were doing not quite battle tomes, when they were sort of index style rules out the gate. And
I want the old Age of Sigmar initial free index.
Yes,
twiddle your mustache and you win the game.
Exactly, yeah. And Chaos Dwarfs was actually quite strong from what I remember out the gate. So that was a popular one, as were the what are they called again? Those weird one-eyed creatures from Hero Quest. They had
Cyclopses?
No, well, with the tails and the green ones.
The tails?
Yeah, they've got eyes and sort of beaky things and
the
tails with maces on them.
Were they the Famir?
Famir, that's it. Yeah, gotcha. Well spotted based on my really bad description.
Well, we got there eventually. But I think that's the thing. I think the Age of Sigmar range has been very poorly supported, and then the Warhammer 40,000 range has been a strange one in so much as, I mean, since 9th edition, I can't think of anything that they've added to the game since 9th edition. I know in 8th they had done a few releases. So if I'm remembering correctly, obviously they had the Astraeus, which is the
Space Marine
big
Super
old
Heavy, yeah.
Space Marine Super Heavy. I think they did whatever that big towel thing is called during the course
is that the Supremacy suits?
Yes, I think so. Yes, Supremacy armor.
Yeah.
Supremacy suits.
They did the Necron Heavy Constructs.
They did the Necron Heavy Construct as well. That was one of the major ones, for sure. In terms of exclusively 40k. And also, I think they did Carib Cullen the Risen as a result of 8th edition.
Yeah, do you know what? I think that probably would have been, unless it came out end of 7th. But you're right, I think it might have been an 8th edition one. Another one I can think of, not necessarily exclusive to 40k, but more 40k than Horus Heresy, is the Warbringer, the Reaver-sized Titan.
Oh yes,
that was the newest one, because that came out alongside or around the time Adeptus Titanicus came out.
Well, they also did Gabriel Seth was part of that hero range. I think they introduced him in 8th edition, if I remember correctly.
I thought that was 7th edition.
No, I think, because if I remember correctly, they did an issue of White Dwarf for the Red Scorpions release, and if I remember correctly, they did that miniature to support the release of Dawn of War 3. And Dawn of War 3, if I'm not mistaken, came out in 2017. And if it came out in 2017, it's highly likely that was 8th edition. But I could be wrong.
I seem to recall that it had rules, and then it had...
Did I say Gabriel Seth, by the way? I meant Gabriel Angelus.
Yes, but you did say Gabriel Seth, yeah. But because I think Blood Ravens had rules in 7th edition, but then had rubbish rules in an 8th edition White Dwarf magazine.
Yes.
Which is why I think he had rules prior to that, which must have either existed just in the 40k index, sorry, the Forge World index, but probably also the 7th edition prior to that.
Oh, he might have been in. All right, fair enough. But there was also, in terms of the Red Scorpions, there's also apparently Kassan Sabius and Sarah Kragagon, regents of the Order of the Orden Rift. So it's a kind of like company champion and a standard bearer. They released alongside Cullen. So I think Carib Cullen the Risen, these guys. But then again, Carabcol and the Risen, was his rules in the old Forge World indexes, or was that a PDF? Probably was in the old Forge World indexes, which would imply that was 7th edition as well.
There's also, and this is a cheat, a load of Custodes units as well.
Well, exactly, but we're talking more just exclusively 40k stuff,
Yes,
as opposed to sort of because obviously there was the Thunderhawk gunship, there was there was all sorts of stuff that they've re-released in recent.
Oh well, they did. So it's a Thunderhawk gunship. There was a resculpt, not in plastic, obviously, but they also did the Stormbird, which was a new unit, but to me that is more a Horus Heresy unit, a bit like the Custodes. But weirdly, with the Custodes, it was just they were the only ones they kind of kept updating for 8th edition. Although there was another one as well. There was, I'm trying to remember the name, but I might have to look it up. It's a tank for the Astra Militarum. There was a Horus Heresy unit, but they bought it across to 8th edition rules, and then subsequently it's the only one that sort of survived into the 9th edition compendium, which has the Volkite weapons on it.
Yeah, but the point we're getting to is that they haven't done much 40k stuff in a good old while. I mean, gone are the days where these guys are, releasing whole ranges of armies that you could collect, or specialist units that you could add beyond, the odd vehicle and the odd Titan and things of that ilk. I mean, obviously the Imperial Knights massively benefited, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But again, obviously that's a lot of Horus Heresy stuff. But the Imperial Knight range has massively benefited from the support of Forge World. So there have been some really good additions to
because the Moiraxes came out during 8th edition, and they turned out to be super popular with the lightning is it lightning locks,
the lightning locks,
what are they called? The
I don't know,
or just lightning cannons, maybe.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about their guns.
Yes, on the gun itself.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, obviously at the moment Forge World's in a really interesting place, though, right? Because I think setting up there what we've sort of said in terms of what's come before and where we're at now, I think Forge World's in a really interesting place because
it is lightning locks. I was right.
Check you out.
Moirax with lightning locks. There we go.
Well, you know your onions. But yeah, Forge World's in a weird place because, like, it feels to me like they're phasing out of the 40k game. And they are obviously happy to do rules and have their cake and eat it when it comes to, the collateral benefit, as it were. It's like, hey, we made this stuff for Custodes and Heresy, and feel free to use them in your 40k games. And we made this stuff for Necromunda, and you can probably get away with trying to use that in your in your 40k games or what have you. But like, they feel like they're kind of phasing out of it, but then they're in this really interesting place that certain armies now only really benefit from, some of the most competitive options for armies now lie within Forge World, which is a really weird place. Like, Custodes are a Forge World army, right? Like, if you're going to run Custodes competitively at the moment, you're going to want to get the troop lads with the may as well be heavy bolters, which is an exclusively Forge World unit. You're going to want the various forms of Dreadnought, which are all exclusively Forge World units. You're going to want your tanks, your flyers. All this stuff is all locked in Forge World. And it's really interesting because obviously in a lot of respects, it's really great that we have access to these units at the moment, because it obviously helps these armies stay more relevant and stay more competitive.
If it wasn't for Forge World, some people would take Custodes, but imagine Custodes where it's like you got a couple of guys on foot, some Terminators, a plastic Contemptor, and a badly painted Land Raider.
I mean,
And-
yours wouldn't necessarily have to be badly painted.
No, but I mean,
you're not taking it off the old studio shelf. You're like, I mean, and I'm sure it's very pretty when you see it in, in reality, as it were.
Yes, but it's just very bland because it doesn't have any fancy transfers on it, which you wouldn't get because I think, Forge World do a great set of transfers. I really think there's many for Custodes, not to the same quality as the Forge World ones, at least for decorating your vehicles. But yeah, like you barely get anything in terms of
you get
support.
Jet bikes, mate. Don't forget the jet bikes.
Yeah, but jet bikes, got some infantry, some Terminators, a Rhino for your sisters, which are also plastic, and then a Land Raider for your Custodes, and like that's it. Like all the cool stuff, as you said, the guys with the guns, the Ventari, the flying guys, mostly the dreadnoughts, and at certain points the hover vehicles, and to a lesser extent the flyers, and like their cool kind of, is it super heavy flyer, like the big Orion? Orion ship.
I just think it's a flyer, mate. I don't believe it's super
just
heavy, but I
just
could be
big.
wrong. It's a chunky boy. You got to be big to be carrying around all those custodes.
Yeah, but Custodes wouldn't be anywhere near as popular if it wasn't for Forge World, because the line is just so limited. And do you think, I almost wonder, like, do you think Games Workshop would have produced more plastic Custodes if it wasn't for the fact that Forge World was sort of propping them up? Like, if the resin line didn't exist, surely they would have made more units for that army by now to flesh them out, because otherwise they would have been, because when they first came out, like, they were a couple of units, and it was like really small. It was like, can you even play an army with these guys?
I mean, I used to think that was actually really appropriate for the Custodes, though, right? Because obviously, when they first introduced them, it was in the Burning of Prospero box set, and they were essentially like a bodyguard unit that obviously were present because they were accompanying the Space Wolves and what have you. So it was, it was totally reasonable that they were there. But the thing is that, the Legio Custodes, as they were back then, was a very different kind of thing to what it is in 40k. And it's sort of interesting that, that obviously they still lean into that in the 40k setting, where they bring out all of their various war machines, dreadnoughts, and all that kind of stuff. It's sort of, it sort of surprises me that they still have access to these kind of, this military
great
equipment.
relics. Yeah, because it was funny, because I do remember vaguely when they first came out, everyone was like, "Where are my 40k rules for these?" And Games Workshop were basically like, "They're on Terra. They don't come out. They're not a kind of gaming army." Like,
yeah.
But clearly, I think there was so much demand for it. They were like, "Wow, let's write some rules in for them. Let's come up with a lore reason for them to come back." I mean, maybe that was always planned all along, because it would almost be crazy for them to create a range from Horus Heresy in plastic, and that's the key phrase, in plastic, that isn't somehow compatible for 40k, because pretty much everything they do in Horus Heresy that's in plastic has an equivalent in 40k and is sellable on the main website, because they know it then becomes, I think, instantly more popular if you've got that dual purpose of, I can play it in Horus Heresy and I can play it in 40k. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's intriguing, right? And I think, Legio Custodes, or the Adeptus Custodes for 40k, is a really interesting example of the influence that sort of Forge World can bring to the, tabletop game of Warhammer 40,000. And it's a really interesting case study in terms of, the importance of them as a studio and as a key contributor to the, the Warhammer 40,000 game, because as you've correctly asserted, Phil, without Forge World, Custodes wouldn't be anything other than a couple units. And, I don't think they'd be nearly as popular, and certainly wouldn't have enjoyed their consistent success, which is fair enough. I mean, it's going to be really interesting, right? Because obviously we know that Custodes are on the horizon, or not on the horizon, sorry. When I say that, I mean, we know that eventually they'll do a Custodes book, because there's not a new Custodes book. Whether that's this year or next, who knows for sure, although I believe the rumors are it's going to be one of the December books. So says
Well,
so says the rumor.
there's what, a 50-50 chance of it. Oh no, actually, because Knights haven't come out yet either. So you've got a 1 in 3 chance of it being a Custodians, because they said one of them's Imperium and one of them's Xenos, and there's only
Well, there you go.
3 Imperium books left. So yeah,
Blimey.
but yeah, like Forge World it's weird. I remember back in 7th edition and 6th edition, like tournaments banned Forge World. It was always seen as being really overpowered and broken. And 8th edition came around, and it really felt like that wasn't the case for the majority of units. And actually, it was like in a much better state, where actually Forge World started to be used in tournaments a lot more. Tournaments were, 8th edition was obviously super popular, so there were more tournaments going around, and it was generally considered like, actually, on the whole, bar 1 or 2 units, Forge World is underperforming as opposed to overperforming. There were some sort of early door issues, I think, but there always were. There were always like combos that were great, like Contemptors, Leviathans. I think even like some of the Basilisk artillery pieces, which they didn't even sell, and they still don't. They're the ones where they had like the 4 legs. They were out the gate really powerful, and then got a points nerf into oblivion, where you haven't ever seen anyone talk about them since. And I think now they're in Legends when it comes to 9th edition. And that was the state. And after a while, everyone was like, yeah, Forge World is pretty good. But we have sort of almost come back round to Forge World being somewhat problematic for certain armies. Like, so currently everyone's going on about Contemptor Volkites for Space Marines and Chaos, because double Volkites is just seen as so good.
Do you feel like that's problematic, or do you feel like that's actually very helpful, though? Because again, what would the Space Marine army be without, those Contemptors?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because on one hand, it's like, is Forge World helping prop up some armies that are underperforming, especially older ones that haven't got a 9th edition codex? Space Marines has a 9th edition codex, but probably is one of the weaker ones because it was the first one out the gate. And yeah, like,
well, I think the other thing with Space Marines as well, though, and I said it at the time, and I do believe it, is that what they did with the Space Marine Codex is they took all of the ideas from the 2019 supplements and balanced it. And that's the thing. It's like Space Marines, to me, feels like one of the most balanced armies on 40k at the minute, because it's, because it isn't super duper overpowered like some of the other ones that require absurd combinations in order to, fully optimize. But those combinations obviously are there, and people use them to great effect. And yeah, I think Marines are definitely I think Marines without these kind of options definitely wouldn't be able to perform to the same extent as they have been recently. Although it's funny again, though, isn't it? Because some of the most powerful units in Marines consistently through 9th is all the old stuff, right? It's drop pods with Devastator squads in them. It's Vanguard veterans, and it's Contemptor dreadnoughts.
Yeah, well, it's almost like Games Workshop wanted to make old models good. And I think partly is a bit like the last edition, 8th edition, was, I don't know, in a way it was redressing it, because 8th edition out the bat, Primaris were rubbish, and actually a competitive Space Marine army was still mostly old school Space Marines. The second version, 2.0, 8th edition codex for Space Marines came out. Primaris were amazing. They were so good. And then this book is a rebalance where they've toned down Primaris. They've brought up regular Space Marines for the Firstborn, but I think because of a lot of the weapon options they get, suddenly they're really good. So, and maybe it is just a points issue, maybe it's a rules issue. But yeah, as you say, Vanguard vets, drop pods, a lot of the old school stuff are the competitive choice now. And part of me is like, are they just wanting not a last hurrah, but go, actually a lot of people still have old Firstborn armies, so let's still make them relevant and competitive. As to your point about the codex, yeah, I think if every codex was sort of around the power level, balance and complexity in terms of rules as the Space Marine Codex, 9th edition would be in a lot better state, a lot better place than it currently is, because I think there's been a real escalation of power creep since the Space Marine Codex. Everyone's pretty much gotten slightly better, and then some way better, and also some have gotten a lot more complex in terms of the amount of rules in those codexes as well. Whereas I think Space Marines really nailed it, because I remember when that came out, when we read it, we were like, this is really good. Actually, they've toned down a lot of the Space Marine stuff from the previous codex, which was way overpowered and was sort of like the one thing that really broke 8th edition was the Space Marine Codex 2.0. But,
yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Although I always look at that Space Marine rule set and think to myself, do I find it less egregious because of the sort of soft introduction that we got to it? Because obviously when they introduced a lot of the core concepts of Space Marines, they did it in 8th edition and they layered it on top. They basically went, here's a bunch of extra stuff. There's this thing called a super doctrine. You're like, wow, super doctrines, they're cool. Yes. But then before they'd even introduced ideas like super doctrines to us in the 2019 supplements and the codex, they'd also, prior to that book coming out, they'd released, bolted discipline or bolted drill, whatever it was called, the bolted shooty.
Yeah, bolted discipline.
Yeah. They'd FAQ'd in chaplains. Like I think they added the chaplain litanies rules into what was it?
It
called?
was in one of
It
was in one of the prior Nexus, but Faith and Fury.
Yes, one of those. Yeah. But they introduced it in there, and then they added it into the. And that was the thing. It was like it was nicely drip fed, and I think that's the thing. A lot of the time, is like I think that's one of the complications with some of these current books is that you're just being introduced to all these like mad concepts, and it's always just like, oh god, more stuff to remember. But anyway, to my point though, to your point though, in terms of the sort of problematic nature of Forge World and where it is at the minute, I think it's in a good place in the sense that it is contributing, strong units to players' armies. But I do think as well that it's going to be interesting to see how much longer this continues in this direction and where Games Workshop kind of resign themselves with this in the future. Is it now that we have essentially got a Horus Heresy range that will be ever expanding? We'll have a fantasy range which will have some Age of Sigmar implementation. We'll have a series of specialist, units and rules that will have certain opportunities. But it's very much going to be a case of moving forwards. We're just not doing any more 40k minis. We're not doing any more 40k stuff. We are just appreciating the fact that we can take advantage of those opportunities where there is some cross compatibility. Because I think it'd be a shame. It is a shame that Forge World isn't noticeably contributing any longer to Warhammer 40,000, because beyond giving us rules for heresy stuff, it's a shame that it's been over a year since they last gave us a brand new exclusive big 40k mini.
Yeah, it sort of feels like they're residing themselves to we're in the realm of doing big kits for 40k very rarely, but that's what we do, because that's the thing you can't easily do in plastic. Like everyone wants a plastic Thunderhawk, and yeah, it probably is doable, but it's probably just not cost effective based on the number of kits that they know they're going to sell at the price they would have to sell it at. It's like,
would you buy a plastic Thunderhawk, Phil?
No. Like, I mean, if I ever somehow created a complete company for my Minotaurs, then I would maybe think about it, but I don't have the space or room for it. I mean, how much is a current Thunderhawk?
It's 800 odd quid, isn't it, or something?
Yeah, I'm just gonna
You're gonna have the old browse on the old Thunderhawk website.
I would imagine it's between like 600 to 800. I would have thought.
Well, the Stormbird is 814.
Thunderhawk gunship 475. I mean, that's still
How is a Stormbird more expensive than a Thunderhawk gunship?
because it's bigger.
I suppose they're. Is it that much bigger though?
No, but it is bigger. It's not twice as big, but it is definitely bigger. In fact, there should be a scale comparison on the.
Yeah, they do a scale comparison. Yeah, it's a much chunkier, interstellar craft.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's
I have been sorely tempted, by the way, by the idea of doing a Thunderhawk gunship army. It is one of those army lists where I'm like,
I'm pretty sure when we went through the compendium, the rules were pretty tasty for it, and I was trying to get you to get one. Yeah,
I might treat myself to one later, but then I got to work out who I'm going to get to commission to build and paint because I ain't going to have the time to deal with that.
Yeah, it's chunky.
It's like my Revenant Titanfall. It's all I've literally just put it in the freezer because I had to like break it apart to start again.
Oh, that's a shame. But we can talk about that more in detail in the outro. The other weird thing is like it's still even to this day it's like the only decent transport. Like there are no flyer transports for Primaris beyond the Stormbird and Thunderhawk. They don't get access to drop pods still. It'll be interesting if that. To me, that's the niche of where Forge World should have come in by now. Going, here's something you can take for your Primaris, and that would have been really popular. And it feels like they've missed a trick by not really carrying on that trend of supporting 40k solely, because there is a lot of stuff that I think they could have done that would have been popular. I guess maybe they've done the Astraeus and maybe that wasn't popular because I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I have seen it around. So yeah,
I've played a couple of games against an Astraeus.
I mean, if I was to buy something for my Primaris army, it would be an Astraeus because it is a kind of
really over and above the Thunderhawk.
Yeah, I think so because it is a Primaris specific vehicle, and my armies.
But Thunderhawks can support Primaris.
Well, that's also true, but yeah, I kind of like the look. It's kind of grown on me. I think early doors I was a bit like that's a bit ugly, but now I'm like that's pretty cool. I'd quite like one of them. It's got some good guns on it.
The thing with the Thunderhawk I like especially is that the promotional photography of the Thunderhawk on the Forge World website features pictures of the Blood Angels tactical squad that you can no longer buy.
Oh yeah, that one. I remember back in the day when we noticed that and talked about it on the website, on the podcast.
Exactly. That was the thing. Didn't your buddy paint?
Yeah, Giuseppe. Well? He was a Forge World painter. He's since gone on to do his own commission painting studio.
Indeed. But yeah, maybe a Thunderhawk is in my future.
Oh, make it happen. Make it happen.
It could be a good addition to a Deathwatch army, I feel.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I think Deathwatch look really good with flyers. Yeah.
Sort of suits the narrative, doesn't it? Like the idea, because what's the transport capacity of a Thunderhawk? I've turned my phone off to avoid weird background noises, even though my other.
I imagine I can quickly look it up. I imagine it's going to be like 40 or 50.
Yeah. Well, if it's 40, you could definitely bundle a few kill teams into one of them. That'd be all right. Make that happen. Something to think about. But this is my point, though, right? And this is the point that I'm sort of illustrating is like, this is the joy of Forge World and why it's such a great addition to 40k, because you can create these really interesting ideas built around big centerpieces or built around stuff that just isn't, I would love to build a Thunderhawk army or an army themed around the Thunderhawk, just because I think it'd just be something that no one would expect to see. It'd just be like, oh, that's mad. Like, cool. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the transport?
It's not loading up. Weirdly, I can see Thunderhawk gunship when I do the search, but when I tap on it, I'm just getting a blank screen, and I don't know if that's my weirdly internet connection or if it's just the app has somehow updated to not work, which could be a thing.
What's that high quality Warhammer 40,000 app in action again, eh?
Actually, do you know what? I think I've noticed this earlier. If you do a search for something and tap onto it, especially the Forge World ones, because I did this when I was trying to look up Hecaton Achios, the character dreadnought for the Minotaurs, it doesn't work. So actually, it's a bug with the search feature. But because I've done this with Hecaton, if you navigate to the Imperial Armor Compendium, then go for the data sheets, and then find it. So hold on, Thunderhawk. Let's go find.
Well, I've just logged on and looked it up, and it is 30. So this model has a transport capacity of 30 infantry, but it can also transport biker models as well. Each Wolfen, Terminator, MKX Gravis, and Jump Pack model takes up 2 slots. Jump Pack models a Primaris Jump Pack model takes up 3 spots instead. Each Centurion or biker model takes up 3 spots, but a Primaris biker model takes up 4 slots.
Whereas a Stormbird has a 50-person transport capacity and can transport 1 Rhino, which takes up the space of 25 models. Isn't that pretty cool?
That is cool. But at the same time, although I do like the idea now that you just said it.
Could you also, and it doesn't say you can't, not have 10 models embarked on the Rhino? A Russian doll style thing is happening here.
I mean, theoretically, that would be fair game, right? Like, you should totally be able to embark 10 models inside the Rhino, which is itself then embarked inside the thing. Yeah, no, I would say that's totally legit.
So in theory, it's only taking up 15 models rather than 25.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair play. I mean, if someone explained that to me, I'd be like, yeah, totally. But then how many points is a Stormbird?
1,000.
Oh, fine. So yeah, chuck a Rhino in. Yeah, no, you could totally build a Stormbird themed army there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said. Like, as you're saying, you can create great centerpieces, great additions to your army. So I got the Gorgon transport for my Krieg, and that's like a really cool super heavy. And it's like I've since bought a lot of the other Forge World super heavies to go alongside that army. I think in terms of models that are propping up current armies, especially in the competitive scene, obviously we talked about the Contemptor for Space Marines. That really feels like the only one currently for the Space Marine Codex. I mean, you used to have the Dreadnought Chaplain, but that got moved to Legends. Guard don't really have anything. I don't think that's specifically good in terms of Forge World models. Tyranids have a Dimmacaron. That seems a popular choice. Chaos have trying to think what they have or what it's called. It's one that can do lots of mortal wounds output. I'm gonna say Raveners or Reavers. Is it Reavers?
I don't know. I know which one you're talking about, but I don't know what it's called.
Let me see if I can quickly find it. And again, the 40k app doesn't have pictures, which always makes it a bit more difficult. I don't think so. Admech doesn't really have anything propping up. The termite drill was really popular in 8th edition. Obviously, Custodes have a bunch of stuff.
Oh yeah, big time.
You've used some Elder stuff quite a bit in 8th edition.
Yeah, it's weird though, because like the Elder stuff isn't being to be fair, the best stuff in the Elder army at the moment is the Forge World stuff. But obviously the Forge World the Elder army is so poor it doesn't matter anyway. Are you looking for the Dimmacaron?
No, the Decimator. That's it for Chaos.
The Decimator, sorry.
Yeah, so there's Decimator for Chaos, Dimmacaron for Tyranids. You got things like Hornets you used quite a lot for your Elder.
I don't think they're used nearly that much, man. To be fair, the Wraithseer is a good shout for your Craftworld army, but
yeah,
I mean, again, they're in such a rough spot.
You've
I don't think it
been
really matters.
you've been singing the praise of Hector Rex, the Inquisitor, as
Oh,
he is
now
actually one of the better Inquisition picks.
he's incredible. The only problem with Hector Rex these days, if you're looking at it from a purely competitive stance, is that he's a psyker, and then he stops you from gaining access to a Bore the Witch as a secondary, which is an
Yes.
important secondary when Grey Knights and Thousand Suns are back on the scene.
Yeah. For knights, you've got the Knight Megara. That's often seen as like the really competitive
Oh, that is
pick
an
because
essential pick for knights. Yeah.
that knight is just so much better. And then obviously we talked about the Moiraxes with Laszloks. That's also a popular choice just because it's got a huge volume of shots, and then 6s do 2 extra hits. So you can be rolling a bunch of dice and then you've got a ton more. I don't think orcs particularly have anything that's super popular or like seen as a real competitive pick that's propping them up. I think when it comes to 9th edition stuff, most of the 9th edition codexes are way better in terms of performance. I think a lot of people would still take things like the orc like war boss on bike, and the bikes that you can get just because they're a cool thematic army, or like a super heavy like the Squigoth, just because they're cool rather than
Squigoths are cool
that they're a competitive pick. I think what's interesting with orcs is they've had a recent update to the FAQ, but they've also FAQ'd the Imperial Armor Compendium for orcs, changing a bunch of the rules, mostly just keeping it up to date with the current codex. So all the old orc units used to have Daka, but that's sort of been removed. But they kept things like Ramshackle and just sort of renamed it in terms of like where you look for it on the new codex. So it does feel like that's the first codex that's had any real impact on the Forge World range in terms of the rules that are written for the 9th edition codex aren't really compatible with how they wrote the rules for the orcs in the compendium, which sort of is interesting because you see some sort of potential. How much foresight did they have when they put together that compendium? I think early doors we were thinking these should be all at the power level of 9th edition codexes. So the Space Marine stuff should be in sync with the Space Marine Codex. The Guard stuff should really be in sync with the future rules for the Guard Codex. So it is compatible with the 9th edition Codex when it comes out. And it doesn't actually feel like that's the case now. It feels like there will be a massive FAQ coming for Guard when it comes to, updating how a battle cannon is going to work, because there's a bunch of, actually it might be because they've cleverly worded a lot of stuff to just be like, see this profile in the Imperial Guard Codex. They won't have to do a lot of updates. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it's going to work in the future, and what the power creep will be or not, as the case might be in the Forge World stuff. Like, will we still see Forge World see a lot of play with 9th ed codexes?
Well, I mean, we are here and there, but again, it's such an inconsistency in terms of, the stuff that is good right now will probably remain good, and then the stuff that will it then become amplified by certain updates? Like, thinking about Craftworld specifically, will a series of Craftworld updates make my various Forge World, Craftworld options even stronger? I mean, there's a very real potential that could be the case. I mean, wait and see, I suppose, is the way I'm going to look at that perspective of things.
Because I think a lot of the codexes that have come out don't really have a lot of Forge World units. So obviously there's Space Marines, and Space Marines sort of feels like it's a bit of an exception to the rule because it was an early codex that seems a lot more balanced. So if we look at things like, to a lesser extent, Death Guard, because that's a new one, but that does have access to a lot of the Chaos units. So recently, Manny Chima won a small, I presume a small tournament or a tournament with a Death Guard list, and within that, he was just spamming 3 Contemptors.
That was a 40k brawl event that I was helping to tee up.
Oh, was that the one you were at? Oh.
That was the one I was helping To on the weekend. Yeah.
So yeah, he took a list of 3 contemptors, all with Volkite, because Chaos can take it as well as regular Space Marines, and then he just super buffed them up apparently, and that was like his whole army, or the linchpin for his army at least. So even a pretty solid 9th edition codex that can have access to Forge World is still taking it, but I think the Volkite's just such a skew unit, or a skew piece of war gear. It's, you know, if it wasn't for that, no one would really care about Contemptors. Like the Relic Contemptor doesn't get any of the buffs it used to get in 8th edition. It's lost its better ballistic skills, lost its better invuln save. I don't think it had a better armor save. But it just had a bunch of cool abilities that it doesn't have, but you take it now just for the extra weapon options that you can get. Like you can get the missile launcher on top, plus you can have dual weapons, which makes it vastly sort of more superior. And you just get a better range of weapons that you can take as well. So that I think is always going to be a popular pick just for the versatility that it gives you rather than the power. But obviously Volkite is making it seem really good, but everything else that's coming,
everyone loves choices, Phil. That's the thing. Choices are always good.
100%. That's exactly it. But if you look at things like Sisters, Admech, Drakari, it's like they don't really have a big Forge World range, so it's a bit hard to see those, like see if there's any impact. Like, I don't think Sisters have anything anymore. Like they used to have the Repressor vehicle. Don't really think they have anything else anymore. I mean, even things like Grey Knights, they don't really have anything specific other than like maybe doors. I'd have to check to see, but they used to have some stuff, but I don't really think they have anymore. So it's a bit hard to tell what's going on with Forge World in relation to the new codexes, just because all the stuff that's been coming out doesn't have a Forge World range.
Yeah, and that's it. I think, you know, I was expecting to see more sort of support for the Sisters of Silence within Forge World, alongside obviously the Custodes range. But I suppose we are where we are with that side of things.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah,
it'd be good if we got that in. That's the thing. You're not going to get it in a codex, and to me, that's like the big, for me, a bit of a mistake in terms of the 9th edition codexes. I would have loved it if this was like the first edition where they merged the two and your codex had all the Forge World units in it as well. But then you get into this weird place where Forge World at a whim discontinues stuff and therefore is no longer supported, whereas the plastic range, there's very few units in plastic that ever really get discontinued, because they quite happily just keep churning out those plastic kits because they're so easy
except those Blood Angels tactical squads.
Yeah, but I mean that was
just
little, you know, visual options really more than anything else. But you are
it's
right.
Not like you can't now get a tactical squad. I get it. You know, it made little to no sense having that. I totally agree.
So I can see why maybe they didn't want to take that risk, because imagine if they had added all those units into the Space Marine Codex, and then this year they've either discontinued stuff, but they haven't really been discontinuing stuff. They've just, you know, they've been out of stock everywhere. It's been really hard to just buy Forge World stuff. Talked in the last episode about how I was trying to get my Relic Contemptor for the Death Guard for my Minotaurs conversion, which has arrived. I've got it, which is awesome finally. But yeah, just so much of the Forge World stock is currently out of stock, or it says it's no longer available, and that's just because they're like reboxing, giving things new product codes, which means in the system it's no longer available, but at some point a new one will come out on the store. But I think again, due to COVID, they're doing stuff at a much slower pace, so that's why so much stuff isn't actually available on the website at the moment. Yeah. And imagine if you had those in your main codex. That'd be really frustrating, wouldn't it? If you were like, I want to get my Relic Contemptor, but I can't because it's sold out for like a year.
Well, I think that's the thing, though. You're never going to be in a situation where they are going to obviously support and promote the Forge World units in, you know, the core codexes, because it's just, you know, it's just a totally different thing. But yeah, it's interesting. It's just interesting. It's interesting to to imagine what that is going to look like in the future and how they're going to continue to evolve into that space. And I think, again, it's been a really interesting transitional time for that side of the business. And yeah, it's just really intriguing. I am, I'm sad in a way that they aren't continuing to support and expand 40K much like they did, in editions of old. But at the same time, I think what they're doing with their kind of specialist games range is really exciting. And I think, I can kind of appreciate and tolerate the trade-off. But it is interesting. It's just a strange, weird, transitional Forge World time.
They are currently cocooned like a caterpillar, and what they will metamorphosize into, will it be a butterfly? Will it be a big killer moth that's going to consume us all? Who knows? Well, I think one hope that there is potentially with the Horus Heresy stuff, that they're really amping up what they're producing for Horus Heresy. They're still doing all their characters in resin, but if there is going to be a box set coming out, the concepts or the idea of rumors is that it's going to all be plastic. There will be some plastic vehicles coming over to be some of the old resin stuff being redone in plastic, and it feels like that would be a bit of a no-brainer to increase that. And then by default, you are filtering that stuff down to 40k by de facto. It's like, imagine we can get a plastic Sakaran tank. How awesome would that be all of a sudden? And by default, it has got 40k rules already, but it will just become a bit more mainstream now. It's a plastic kit. So you look at, now here's an interesting one, and I don't know if it existed before. So Relic Terminators, which is the plastic Cataphractae and Tartarus Terminators, are in the Games Workshop core codexes. So it's in the Space Marine Codex, right? Because it's now plastic. So if in theory we get a Relic Contemptor with all these different weapon options in plastic, if we get a Sakaran tank in plastic, in theory, that means those rules will move from the Forge World Compendium into the mainstay, like Games Workshop Codex.
Yeah, that's entirely logical.
Wouldn't that be
I think that will
cool?
happen.
And I hopefully, I don't mind. It's a shame they're not creating new stuff for 40k. But if their idea is we're going to slowly slowly move our resin range of cool vehicles and kits over to plastic, predominantly via the medium of Horus Heresy, and in doing so, bring those rules from the Forge World Compendium into the core codexes, I think that'd be really cool. And is a great way to sort of bring life to those kits sort of anew, and to keep them more supported. And we have seen it with, some of the rules and even the supplements. Some of the stratagems and stuff are worded in a way where they do specify like knights specifically from Forge World. So the rules writers are, thinking about Forge World units as they go, and hopefully those things will just be slowly brought into the fold. It probably won't be anytime soon, but imagine 10 years time, imagine there's very few resin models left, except big knights, big titan models. Everything else is in plastic. All the Horus Heresy stuff, bar characters, like all the Necromunda stuff and Blood Bowl, all in plastic. Like, that would be phenomenal.
It would be pretty amazing. An exciting time ahead, my friends. But I reckon that'll probably do on that topic. Shall we transition now to whatever it is we decide to do next?
Give it your best transitional noise.
I don't know if it'll be my best, but it'll be the one I do right now, which is woo! So, I'm having one of those weeks, mate. I can't really think of too much to do for the outro, but you're going to no retreat, aren't you?
I'm going. I finally found my way back after not getting an official invite. I've weaseled my way in at the last minute with 2 weeks to go.
The secret society of the slippery fingers strikes again.
Exactly. Yeah, they do love a bit of old Kriegy boy Phil fingers. So
That's it. That's it. They
They've,
know that you are, you are ready for the application of those said slippery fingers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think there's been a few dropouts. And
How does that make you feel, though, Phil? Do you not think that that's just a bit rude?
Well, I think the very first person to drop out many months ago, they asked me. Well, maybe not the very first, but one of the first dropouts. They contacted me then to ask, and I was a bit unsure because I think we were just coming out of lockdown and stuff. So I ummed and ahed and sort of deferred my place. So it's nice to know I was on the reserve list. So I sort of made, the first cut at the very least when it came to deciding who's going and stuff. So it's nice to be able to go. Although I was on the fence about it, partly because it's like I really wanted to only go if I could take my Minotaurs, and I haven't got them done basically in time. What a surprise!
I am absolutely shocked.
I was trying to work out if I could take my Minotaurs plus some Assassins plus some Inquisition to make up the numbers, but basically
I not just finished your Knight Castellan that you own, and then you could have probably done it.
No, because the rules of the rule pack means it's got to be mono faction. So for an Imperium faction, you can only take 2 detachments. You've obviously got your mono faction as your main thing. So whether you're taking Guard or Marines, that's 1 detachment. You can then have a bonus detachment of Assassins or Inquisition or what is it? The Priests, the Ministorum. Which is an interesting one. So you can take an extra detachment of those 3 things. And I was trying to work out the combination because you can also take an Inquisitor or a Assassin via the Agents of the Imperium rule as well. So I could have a battalion of Minotaurs plus an Inquisitor on top. Then I could have had a detachment of 4 Assassins, for example. And 4 Assassins is 400 points, so that's a reasonable hefty amount for making up the shortfall. But ultimately, I'd still be a couple of 100 points short. Plus, it feels like a bit of a weak outing for an event for them. I'd rather go but with a full proper Minotaurs army. So I'm taking my Krieg once more.
Lovely stuff, mate. Lovely stuff. Well, there you go. I mean, it's exciting that you're getting a go. Believe it or not, listeners, Phil is actually trying to convince me to do yet another Phil Goes to No Retreat. Let's hear about what Krieg he's bringing segment again.
Well, it's a solid.
Maybe we need to talk to our patrons on this one. Maybe this is a patron poll.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
Do we want to hear Phil prattle on about taking Death Riders to No Retreat again?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's like this would be my 4th time there, so it's like I don't want to take the same Krieg.
No, that's
so
true.
I want to take something different. So what are
you gonna take then? Grenadiers?
Well, then I'm spoiling the potential episode if I say.
Sure. Oh my god, yeah. I mean, everyone's chomping at the bit for that.
Well, no. So yeah, Grenadiers, I technically couldn't take because they're in Legends. So, and I don't.
Yeah, but it's No Retreat. It's a fun, fluffy fun time. It's not.
This is the thing.
No Retreat Legends or whatever it's called, where all the. How come you didn't get to go to that?
Well, because my YouTube channel and our
podcast
is clearly not big enough.
How much does it cost to go to No Retreat?
What, in terms of the actual events tickets?
Yeah, like how much for anyone aspiring for No Retreat? What's the
I believe it's £145 for the tickets. So that is the event itself is Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
You also get your little event intro pack, which I assume I'm not getting because it's too last minute. So you get your invite with a little box.
So what, you're only going to have to spend £135?
Well, I think because I'm filling it in, I'm a last resort person. I don't actually have to pay for the event ticket. I'm a pro bono as far as I'm
Is
aware.
that something that we're allowed to disclose, Phil? It feels like, given the fact that a lot of people have spent 145 quid to be there, the fact that you're not seems like something we shouldn't be talking about.
Well, I mean, you can cut that out if you want.
It's up to you, mate. I'm happy to leave it in if you're happy to leave it in. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, that's what they've told me, because I think other people have come and then they've dropped out, so they will. I think they'd rather
The money's
have
come
people.
from somewhere.
Yeah, I think they'd rather they have someone fill the spot than not. I mean, I'm happy to pay for a ticket.
No, I know you are, mate. I know you have done. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's all good. I'm not suggesting for a moment that you wouldn't have paid. I'm just, again, it's interesting, isn't it? But again, it depends. It depends what their refund policy's like, I suppose. I mean, if you pull out on them at the last minute, I guess, because that's the thing, isn't it? It's actually, and look, I understand that the world circumstances are what they are, and it's difficult to commit to that kind of stuff when there's all the various things going on. But I do understand, like, because if I was them, I probably wouldn't offer a very robust refund for people who, pull out relatively late, because obviously it's like, it is quite a contest to get selected for that event. All joking aside, it is quite difficult to get in. So it must be quite frustrating for the organizers when, people on a whim just decide to drop out. And I'm sure it's not on a whim.
No,
whatever, but,
it's normally commitments, or in this case, it's probably quite difficult to travel to Gibraltar, because I think most flights are from the UK, and UK is probably not on a green list for a lot of countries. So, if you're coming from somewhere in Europe, they might say going to the UK to get to Gibraltar isn't a travel corridor. So it's like, do you want to spend 2 weeks in quarantine to go for a fun weekend playing 40k? Probably not, which may be the case for a lot of people depending on the circumstances, or their individual countries might be in lockdown and they can't even go.
That's true.
Sometimes it might be work commitment or other things that are going on base, so which is why people drop out. I mean, normally there are a couple of people dropping out every year at some point due to commitments or money or whatever it might be. But I think this year, especially, in last year, because of COVID, it's all over. And people will drop out. I'm not sure what the refund policy is.
Because you always stand by your commitments, Phil, so you never need to worry. You don't have to concern yourself with that refund policy, because you're not going to drop out. But question, because then obviously, so like, I mean, flights, are they looking all right for this time of year?
Yeah, so I got flights today, dirt cheap, but they're not normally.
Are you business classing it?
No, I'm going economy. I think plus? Economy plus, because it gives you an extra. You can then check in baggage into the hold, which I don't normally do. But normally I'm shoving. So normally you get 2 hand luggages, one of which is my case to go in the overhead locker, and then all my clothes, all my rule books, and this is for 4 days, gets crammed into a backpack that then somehow miraculously has to fit under the seat in front of me. And it's a bit of a nightmare, but it is doable. And I always
who are you flying with?
BA, because it's actually cheaper than
EasyJet.
EasyJet, yeah. So Phil from.
I always get uneasy on an EasyJet. I don't know whether that's ironically the case for those things.
Yeah, I haven't.
I find that when my flight is sponsored by a soft drink company, it's a very kind of weirdly disconcerting realization of the commercial nature of the whole thing, obviously. But
I find with EasyJet, you always get hit with hidden fees, so it seems cheap up front, but then once you've paid for your luggage and extra stuff, it actually ends up not much. Ends up being more expensive.
It's weird as well, because I always feel like, and again, it's been a little while since I've been on an EasyJet plane. It's been a while since I've been on any plane, but I think one of the last flight I did when I was able to do so was an EasyJet flight, and I think they only had like one toilet in the thing at the back. And I'm used to when you get on to like the BA version, there's like the front toilet and the back toilet with like an area, but it feels like for the EasyJet flights, they just really prioritize more seats.
I mean, I've never got to hang out at the front part of a BA flight, so I don't know what it.
Well, it's not that I got to. Well, you walk past it, don't you? I'm not talking about like a proper plane. I'm talking about one of the little ones.
I would assume there would be. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never hung out near the front of a proper plane. Like, what are they? The big one, the double-decker ones. You ever been on one of those double-decker ones?
I haven't actually, no.
Have you not? Oh man, they're weird. Like, it's super strange. But if you get to go on a double-decker plane and you are in economy, try and get yourself onto the top floor, because well, it's interesting. The top floor is okay because if you get like a window seat on the top floor, there's like a little cubby to the side of you, so it's okay. At least on the BA variant of it. It's been ages since I've been on a plane. I wouldn't mind flying somewhere again for the first time in a while. It's been so long. But there you go. So you got a good cheap flight from the good people of BA. And then hotel, is that covered in the ticket
no,
cost,
so that's extra. So
God, it racks up, doesn't it, these things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it is. I'm trying to think what it was from last year.
But you're looking at, under normal circumstances, paying for the ticket, the flights, the hotels. I mean, food and everything else. I mean, that's a good 4-figure weekend, that is.
No, I think you can do it cheaper.
Oh,
than
come
that.
on, yeah.
I would say you're looking at 500-600 quid all in.
Oh, you reckon?
If you get your flights are going to be, I don't know.
Normally they'd be like 150, 200 quid, right?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. So they do go up in price depending on which day and flight and how popular it is. So this year it's like super low. So it's like 120, I think.
Oh, wow.
Or thereabouts.
Okay, yeah.
So it was, and that was with me paying like an extra tenner each way to upgrade my seat,
to have
to get my luggage. Yeah, to get my luggage in to B+. Yeah, whatever that actually means. So yeah, it could have been even cheaper. Although I'm not going out. No, I'm going out on a decent flight, but when I'm returning, I'm getting an afternoon flight, so I've got to sort of loiter around Gibraltar from the day on Monday. Normally you get
the hardship.
Well, I think,
how will you find it? What will you do?
Well, I'll just have to go for a wander or go for a run or something, and I'm sure I can find something to do. But normally you go, I'll get the 11 o'clock flight because there's nothing to do, like the event's over, everyone's going traveling back. So basically that flight was like alone, because it's clearly fully booked and there's only a few tickets left, was like 250 quid if I wanted that morning flight. And it's like, or it's like 20 quid for the afternoon flight. So I was like,
well, I mean,
I'll take the afternoon flight, thank you. Yeah.
Of course.
But also, so normally when you get sort of in the application of no retreat and they've confirmed that you're in it, if you buy your tickets straight away or as soon as possible, it's relatively cheap. But normally, because everyone's flying out on the same flights from the UK, the prices of those flights do go up and can go up like 200 quid and stuff. So if you want to go cheap, you've got to book quicker, basically. For those
so almost like you basically need to do one of those things with like the group that are going out and be like, right, everyone buy simultaneously.
Pretty much that is what happens, I think, because normally people that confirm and once they paid for their tickets get added into like a special WhatsApp group so everyone can chat with each other beforehand and like see the progress of their armies and stuff. So it's like I'm not in that yet, so I've missed out on that whole build up, and that's one of the things. It's like going to be that social aspect of it. And people will be like, I'm getting my flights now and stuff like that.
No, it sounds like it would run you about $1,000 under normal circumstances once you do a bit of, which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying that's bad. That's what it is.
I don't think it would be that much. I mean, hotel's probably going to be a couple of hundred if you're staying on your own. So you always get an option to share with someone else if you don't mind that.
Oh, you don't do that though, do you, Phil? You're not going to deal with those snorers.
No, exactly. That's the thing. I can't deal with snorers. So it's like I'll just pay for my own room. That's fine. Like I'd rather do that and have some quality sleep as opposed.
See, I don't mind snorers as a snorer
because you can outsnore them.
I outsnore most. It's biblical proportions going on here. The core of the earth.
We have shared hotel rooms, and I can hear you snoring from the adjacent room.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all. It is pretty horrific, to be fair. It was especially bad a few years ago. I feel like I'm less bad these days, but it's still several degrees of awful.
No.
Well, it's interesting, mate. I mean, maybe. I mean, again, we'll put it to a poll. We'll put it on the old Patreon and see if anyone's interested. Although I fear the kind of people that support us on Patreon, the good people that support us on Patreon, the wonderful people, so on and so forth. We've got to be nice to them. Not because
you're going to say they'll say yes to when, I think.
Well, it's not that they say yes to anything. I think they're very sympathetic to
I'll tell you.
to your cause.
I'll tell you what. If you come up with an alternative thing to talk about, we'll pitch both to them and let them decide which is the topic to talk about.
Well, I could talk about LGT, but the problem is I just don't care enough about the LGT to want to talk about it for more than 10 minutes. I'm doing it. It's a tournament. Maybe, I mean, obviously I'm going to do a retrospective.
I mean,
LGT,
there's enough room for us both to talk about LGT. I mean, we talked about it.
Just do tournament chat.
Yeah,
tournament
so we talked about it briefly last episode where, you went through your list and I sort of briefly talked about the doubles I'm doing with Richard, but we can go through that.
Oh, yeah, what's your list for the doubles?
Detail. Well, that I've relatively finalised. I wanted to sanity check it with you.
Talk us through it, Phil. Tell us about your doubles list.
So let me get the list up. It is
all right.
So Minotaurs White Scar successors.
I'm so surprised by your commitment to the White Scar successor situation.
I like the
talk me through the list, and I'll tell you whether I think that's a good plan or not.
So normally I do Inheritors of the Primarch. So you can advance and charge. You can advance and shoot with no penalty, and you can fall back and charge, which is pretty cool. All good things.
It's a lot of good groovy things. Yeah.
But due to the weapon options that I've got with the units that I have to take, and I'm basically taking what's painted, pretty much. So that limits me to an extent. So instead, I'm taking Hungry for Battle, which is add one to the advance and charge, and also Whirlwind of Rage, which is effectively exploding sixes in combat.
Yes.
So each six you.
What is it that you can't combo Whirlwind of Rage with?
It's like something dualists, which is
yes, that's it. I think it's sixes always wound.
Yeah, sixes to hit, auto wound. Yeah, only
which
infantry,
makes sense that they wouldn't let those
only against infantry and bikers. So that one to me is too limited, whereas exploding sixes seems pretty good. Only on the turn that you've charged, I think, made a charge move, was charged, or heroically intervened. So second round of combat, I'm not getting the benefit of that. So potentially there is one other that is a fullback and charge, might be more beneficial of a combo.
Yeah, tactical withdrawal.
Yes, that's it. So that might be another better option. Anyway, on to the actual.
It is a strong option.
Yeah.
That's really strong as Ultramarines.
I can imagine so.
Well, because the weird thing is if you do Inheritors of the Primarch or do the Ultramarine stuff, the Ultramarine Super Doctrine states that if you fall back, you're -1 to hit. But the Ultramarines ability is you can fall back and shoot, but you are always -1 because you fell back.
Yes.
However, if you're in your Super Doctrine as Ultramarines, if you fall back in your Super Doctrine, you count as being stationary. And as you know, in Warhammer 40,000 9th edition, not moving, stationary is its own state.
Yeah.
And it trumps all other... So, basically, the way the Ultramarine rule is written, it trumps all other
So it
states.
Means you haven't fallen back, therefore you can...
You haven't fallen back.
Can you also charge again, or you can't charge?
Yes, so here's the thing, right? The way the rule is constructed, you can essentially fall back, shoot, and charge. Whereas with the Ultramarine thing, you can fall back and then you shoot at -1. Whereas if you don't have that, you can still just fall back and shoot. It's weird. It's a weird synergy thing in terms of how those things, go on top of each other. But anyway, tell me what's in this list.
So my leader, Captain Geryon, is my Smash Captain. He's
Geryon.
He's normally upgraded to Chapter Master status. And I give him the relic Chapter Master armor, so he's +1 toughness. So he looks like the Gravis captain that he is. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that this time. Controversially, well, I could do, but I've got to drop other things for the points. So this is something that's up for discussion. So at the moment, he's not a Chapter Master. He's a regular.
Seems like a mistake.
He's a regular captain with a Thunder Hammer and a Storm Shield. I'm paying the extra points, tempered by Wisdom, to give him an extra Warlord trait.
You're going for the double Warlord.
Yeah, so I'm taking Hunter's Instinct, which is a White Scar specific one. So when resolving an attack against a monster or vehicle, I get +1 to hit and +1 to wound.
Well, that's handy because obviously it negates the whole -1 from the hammer.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
fammer.
So always hitting on
And then-
2s. Then
And then in a lot of instances, you're going to be winning on 2s, right? Because when you're going against monsters, you're going to be winning on 3s if they're toughness 5 or above. So yeah, you're getting winning on 2s.
But then so I'm also taking the Imperium Sword. So I get to reroll.
Oh, nice. So reroll charges.
Reroll my charges. Yeah. I get a +1 attack.
And so you'll be on 5 attacks.
Yep, 5 attacks. Then +1 strength as well. So I'll be
strength 9. Strength 5.
Yes, and no, because it's the Thunderhammer doubles it first.
Oh, it's multiply then plus.
Yeah, I was having a chat with Richard this morning about it because I thought, is it 10? No, it turns out it is 5.
No, it's he's right. It's 9.
So it'll be strength 9. So I'll be.
But you're not taking it for the strength buff. You're taking it for the attack and the reroll charge.
Yeah,
right?
Pretty much. But the 9's handy because it means against toughness 8 stuff, I'm wounding on 3s, but because of Hunter's Instinct, I'm wounding on 2s. So
yes,
he becomes a really good kind of vehicle killer.
And then obviously because you're White Scar's successor, when you're in the Super Doctrine, you're getting that +1 to the damage, right?
Yeah. So when I'm in the Assault Doctrine, I'm +1 damage, so I'll be damage 4. Nice. And also -1 AP, so I'll be -2s become -3s. And also I'm making my Thunderhammer a Mastercrafted Thunderhammer, so I can go up to damage 5, which seems excessive, but
until it isn't.
Well, against a vehicle, it's probably really good to just maximize the damage that you can do against them, even though. So another Warlord trait I could take instead is Cherogian Storm, which is D3 extra attacks, which is good, but I sort of feel like the wound ability is more useful.
It's really efficient if you find yourself in any matchups against Death Guard as well, though, because if you're flat damage 4, even with their -1, you're dropping their Terminators on once you get those pens through. Obviously, they got their 4-up inbun, which is hard to get through, but
yeah. So he's not bad. Choice.
You have buffed him to
high heaven. So the rules of the thing are your CPs are only your own. So I get 6 CPs to spend at the start of the game, and I generate 1 a turn. Richie generates 1 a turn, but he can't. We can't share them basically. He's starting off, I believe, with 0 potentially. Because he's just loading them all up onto a Leviathan Dreadnought.
He's loading up on carbs.
Basically, yeah. So the captain in his current form, 3-up save, +1 for the Storm Shield, 4-up inbun. So he's got a 2-up save. If I went for the other version where I upgraded him with the Chapter Master armor, I think he gets a 1-up save by default because that gives him +1, which is also good. Next up is a Primaris Lieutenant. Comes standard with power sword, bolt gun, or bolt pistol, should I say? Because that's what he's armed with on the model. I'm giving him the relic of Galfamor. Galfamor, which is subtract 1 from psychic tests within 18 inches, and any failed tests on a 4+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds.
Any failed test within the range, or any failed test anywhere?
Oh, for that unit. So a unit within that aura of 18 inches.
Suffering the -1.
Yeah,
I don't love that.
It's on the fence because it costs an extra CP to add it in, but I quite like it because I don't think as an army we have any psychic defense. So having that might be interesting, but might be completely useless at the same time.
Yeah, I just give him the Burning Blade if you're going to do it. It just seems like the easy, safe option.
Well, that's true. Make him a bit more smashing.
More punchy.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, if you're going relic-wise, just go Burning Blade. Because, in that 1 or 2 games where it's useful, it'll be very useful. But then the problem you've got is you've got a foot-slogging Primaris Marine that, isn't going to make it that far up the board to be impactful to that kind of stuff consistently enough. I know he's fighty, and I know you're going to want to sort of sit in that mid-table, but it's going to take you at least. You're not going to get anything out of it. Probably 2 turns out of 5.
Yes.
Whereas, whereas the Burning Blade is super valuable if you get it to happen. So, because what's the Burning Blade? It's like strength +3 or strength +2.
Yeah.
-3, -4.
I think it's -4. Yeah, it's crazy.
And is it like 3 damage or something like that?
I think so. Yeah, it's pretty.
It's
potent.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable. And seeing as it's armed with a power sword, if you're in the business of spending on relics, I'd look at that.
That's true.
Or you could look at giving one of your sergeants a relic, which is another option.
Yeah, so I do have an option for that as well, which I'll talk about when I get to them, which we'll talk about now, in fact. So I've got 3 squads of intercessors. 2 of them in this version will be 5-man. 1 of them will be 6-man, because I had 20 points to spare, and that was all I could think to do it in.
What are they armed with?
Well, I'm
rifles,
just going
right?
with bolt rifles. At a WYSIWYG in terms of the models, 2 squads of bolt rifles, 1 squad is Stalker. To go into the White Scars, it would be better if I was going Inheritors of the Primarch. It would be better to say they were all also bolt rifles.
Well, of course.
I'm quite happy to just to say they're all bolt rifles, and in fact, I can actually run them as squads that are actually all WYSIWYG, because I'm painting up 30. I'm only taking 15 or 16, so I can actually play them properly WYSIWYG.
Well, that'd be good. I mean, or you could mix some Stalkers in. It's sounding more and more like, other than obviously the fact that you've got that super potent stuff that you've done on your Warlord at the minute, you know, consider the Ultramarines. Anyway, moving on.
True. Yeah, so each squad, they've got a grenade launcher with them. One of them's got a Thunderhammer, one of them's got a Power Fist, and the other one hasn't got anything, so I'm going to give him a chainsword, because it's
you could make that into the relic chainsword, couldn't you? I think you can give him that relic chainsword.
No, you can only give him some really specific stuff from the White Scars list. So you can.
Yes, that's where it comes from.
I think it's like digital weapons, maybe mastercrafted. One of them, the one I want to give him, because it's thematic with the model, and I kind of built it in mind. So I've got one of my sergeants is holding up a severed head, and the idea is it's meant to be a bit like the Medusa head, because it's all Greek mythology. So it's going to be painted up to look like a sort of dead rogue psycho, and at some point, if I get time, I'll do glowing eyes on it. And I want it to represent Stormwrath bolts. And I don't know the rules off the top of my head, but as far as I'm aware, it's basically, if you're shooting at a monster, you can elect it to basically do a single shot, but it's like +2 strength, your default AP, but it's like an extra, I can't remember, I think it's like extra damage or something. But if it's against a monster, because you can actually just fire it normally, but if it's against a monster, it's D6 damage. So I was like, I like that, sort of representing the kind of psychic Medusa head. Shooting beams at people. And as far as I'm aware, it still benefits from the normal AP of the weapon, and the Stalker Bolt, if I was to run it, Stalker Bolt has better AP. So I think that kind of combos quite well, I think, if I was to do that one, which is also an option. But, you know, how often do you go up against monsters? I mean, maybe nowadays more often than not.
Well, when you see those Democurians coming at you, you'll be wanting to know all the help you can get.
Well, exactly. And then last up, I've got 3 squads of Inceptors. I've got 3 squads of 3. 2 of them are with the Auto Bolters, and 2 of the squads. One of the squads is with the Plasma. So the only way I can see myself taking the Chapter Master upgrade is I've got to drop the Plasma for the Auto Bolters instead, or the Assault Bolters. So because I've got 1 squad that's magnetized, so I can run those however I want, because that would then give me enough points to get the captain, but then I end up with a load of spare points, which I could add into probably an extra intercessor.
Could you, here's an idea, could you take an Inceptor out of one of the squads and then amalgamate that squad into a 5-man squad?
I could, yes.
And then you'd have the 40 points, and then that could be a viable target to get the Chapter Master upgrades.
Ooh, yeah, I guess the only downside is they wouldn't be Plasma, they would just be the regular bolters.
Well, you still got Plasma, it's just because you wouldn't want to pay the premium on a 5-man Plas squad, but for the bolters, I feel like, take out one of them, put a 5-man unit on, and then reroll hits with the bolts if you need them. It's pretty tasty for what it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shots, right? Rerolling all
Yeah,
hits.
it's like, well, a 3-man squad is 18 shots of heavy bolters, basically.
Yeah, so opening turn, the move of those guys is what?
10, yeah. So it's weird. The captain is 12 inches. They're,
because he's a jump
yeah,
pack
but
captain.
they're 10 inches.
Yeah. But obviously they can advance and shoot with no penalty for that. Or
If I go
no,
they're assault. So if I go Inheritors of the Primarch, I can advance them and shoot with no penalty. But as it stands, I can't. But I can still advance with them, and I get +1 to my advance rolls. But I'd be getting the -1 for the shooting.
But then if you're re-rolling everything, they're still pretty tasty.
Yeah, because it'd be hitting on 4s, re-rolling everything.
It might give you a little bit more flexibility in places, because that way, if you need to, do the 10 plus D6 to get a lot. Well, sorry, 11 plus D6 as it'll be. To get a line on someone or get some line of sight or whatever. Maybe a bigger unit that then benefits from the chapter master buff in the opening turn, just to give you some options, because it's range 18.
Yeah, range 18. It's the bolter and plasma are the same range. Yeah,
it's pretty reasonable. I mean, if it were me, I'd probably put the plasma in reserve most games, because it feels like something with that relative range that it can really turn up and do some damage and just be really durable. But I think if you're gonna do that, it feels like you need to take the captain with them to give them the re-rolls. Otherwise, they're just going to die. The problem is with the captain is he can't give them he can only give them the re-roll once.
Yes, but that's all you care about in terms of overcharging.
Yeah, but if you're smart with your positioning, you can create situations where that's an opportunity. Because a lot of the time you need to be, if it were me, I'd be looking at, okay, cool, I'm positioning this here in turn 1 on the assumption that, my captain will still be alive, because you've got to chew your way through a bunch of these inceptors to get to them, unless of course you're rocking something that ignores line of sight. But even then, you've got a very, very healthy captain, so you shouldn't worry too much about it being killed outright. But I mean, obviously it can happen, because obviously your captain without that war gear upgrade is deceptively low on wounds. I mean, he's only 5 wounds.
Yeah, I think so.
Which again, consider, I think regular Gravis captains are like 7 wounds or something.
I don't know if it's that high.
I think it is, weirdly. I think a Primaris captain's like 6 wounds.
So yeah, he's 5. The jump pack guy's 5 wounds by default.
Yeah.
Oh,
maybe that's the same as the Primaris then. In which case, okay, 6 wounds for the Gravis. But irrespective, I think that's the thing. It's like, I think if you position it in such a way, and then in the corresponding turn using that 12-inch movement, you can set up where the Plas comes in, and then you can still benefit from the reroll ones, and then you can still have that chapter master buff going off in a few places, which is really valuable. I mean, it's valuable where it's valuable. I mean, even if you just plonk it on that 6-person unit and fly away, I mean, it's still quite good.
Yeah. So do you reckon it's better to upgrade into Chapter Master, then give him the Armored Relic as opposed to the Mastercrafted Thunderhammer?
Mastercrafted Thunderhammer thing. I think the thing is with the Mastercrafted Thunderhammer is that you got to remember that obviously for 2 turns out of your 5, you're not going to be in the Assault Doctrine unless, of course, you
pay for it.
Pay a lot of CP.
Is it 1 CP for that? I think.
I think it's weirdly 2 for Space Marines now, unless White Scars have 1 specifically.
No,
because I think the Space Marine one is that you're in all doctrines at the same time, and I think it's 2 CP weirdly. But yeah, regardless of that though, I think you just gotta work out. I think again, being damage 5 is big, because what that means is you only need 2 hits to get through to even if you get 2 hits through, I don't think you kill Contemptor Dreadnoughts, because a Contemptor Dreadnoughts 8 wounds or 9 wounds?
8, I believe. Yeah.
Well, if they're 8 wounds, then you get 2 hit throughs, you kill a Contemptor.
Yeah. So adaptive strategy 2 CP, but only works on core units. So obviously wouldn't work on your captain unless there's another version, because that is the one where you're in all doctrines.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I mean, there are ones for other armies, but not for the 2019 supplements.
Okay.
So I think, to me, I think you got to work on the assertion that you're going to come up against the Volkite Contemptors in places because they're too optimal, especially within a double setting not to take. So
well, weirdly,
having-
it's is labelled as a non-competitive event, so you shouldn't. But then,
well, you might still see one. Even then, you're going to see a Contemptor.
I think.
of
Well,
some
yeah,
sort, right?
I think you'll see plenty. Well, I mean, Richard's taking at least 2 Contemptors and a bunch of other dreadnoughts. So there will. I think there'll always be people rocking a relatively competitive list.
Of course,
Even
of
at
course.
what is meant to be like a friendly casual event, because
Yeah,
people just don't want to get smashed. So, and they
No,
don't
of
necessarily
course.
want to try hard either.
But the point is if you're up against a Contemptor, Custodes Contemptor, admittedly those ones have got the venerable 6-up feel no pain thing, so it's unlikely that you'll kill that outright with 2 hits going through. But the point is against a regular Contemptor that isn't Iron Hands, but they're all Iron Hands. So yeah, but theoretically you could kill a Contemptor with 2 hits getting through, which, given that it's a vehicle, which again triggers all your buffs, you could basically hit it on 2s, wound it on 2s. You'd have your 6 attacks on the charge. Sorry. Yeah, your 6 attacks on the charge because you're 5 with
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, 6 attacks on the charge, hitting on 2s, and you can put your own buff on yourself if you know that you're going for that as well. So yeah, it's likely, right? Like you could one shot a contemporary type model with that, and you could definitely put a lot of hurt on any kind of like Death Guard armies. Because again, I mean, on the assumption that you might get 4 wounds off out of 6 attacks. Well, I mean, if it's 2s followed by 2s, although it wouldn't be 2s followed by 2s because they're not monsters. But the point is that if it's 2s followed by 3s or whatever it is, the thing is like, say you get 4 wounds off. I suppose they only failed 2 4 of invulns, but that's, most people are only taking like 3, especially in those kind of points. It might be 3-man units of Death Shroud, so you might do some work with that. So it's interesting, man. I think, as a list, I think it's kind of cool. But yeah, I think if it were me, the only thing I'd sort of look at is like, taking a 5-man unit of Inceptors and then giving yourself the Chapter Master buff because it is really valuable. And I think that would complement, because it just gives you options. And it would, especially when you're putting so many CPs and relics into him, you may as well go all in on that side of things.
And then you reckon spend an extra CP to take the Imperium Sword on the Primaris?
The Imperium Sword.
Sorry, the Flaming Sword or the Burning Blade. Sorry.
Oh, so the Lieutenant.
Yep.
Yeah. For the Lieutenant, I just take the Burning Blade rather than the Anti-Psyker stuff. I mean, obviously, if it transpires that the Anti-Psyker stuff is going to bite you in the arse, then obviously I apologize. But Richie's Blood Ravens are not Blood Ravens, sorry, Red Scorpions are a Iron Hand successor, right? Or is he doing all these Imperial Fists?
I think his top pick is Iron Hand, second pick is Salamanders for the rerolls. And the fact there's a stratagem that allows Cullen, because he's a character, to get back up from the dead.
Yeah. See, I'd probably lean into Iron Hands only because of the fact that they do have a baked-in 4+ deny.
With his only, with his 0 to 1 CP, he gets.
But it's a good thing to store 1 CP for.
That's
if he's
true.
got no CP, spending 1, the one that he generates each turn to potentially stop really devastating powers is really useful. So
that's true.
Unless it's Thousand Suns, in which case it doesn't matter anyway because they just sort of go, well, we don't care, and just keep doing stuff. So
yeah, no, that's a good choice.
Yeah, no, I like it, mate. I think that I think it sounds cool, and it's great that you've obviously got the Red Scorpions and the Minotaurs, nice and Forge World.
Exactly.
Badab. Now all you need is some Kakarodons and a whatever Huron was before he became Huron Blackup.
The Celestial. No, not Celestial Lions.
No, not Celestial Lions. Lunar Claws. Astral
Claws, that's it, yeah. I know someone that does Lamenters as well.
There you go. Get the Lamenters in there. Be a beautiful, beautiful thing. Well, there we go. That was nice. And that was me saying I didn't want to talk for a long time.
and you've stretched it out once again.
It's, I'm just interested, Phil. I wanted to hear about what you were bringing.
We were going to talk about it, whether it was on the podcast or not.
Exactly. So we may as well have recorded it,
Exactly.
and we did.
Exactly.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Badabby, bye-bye.
Thank you to our patrons. Buy some merch. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.